Chapter 443. In the wilderness, a man walked as if he was taking a stroll, but his every move attracted everyone's attention. He stepped on the void. Ripples appeared in the void under his feet. It was as if there was an invisible staircase supporting him, preventing him from falling from the void. Although he was walking, his speed was extremely fast. In just a few steps, the man had already passed the people of the Scarlet Kingdom and Purple Moon Kingdom and appeared in front of them. This was a man whose age could not be determined. At a rough glance, he seemed to be in his 40s or 50s, but at a closer look, he seemed to be in his 80s or 90s. It was difficult to determine his exact age. There's another king-level combatant, the fourth king-level combatant. Looking at the man, the people of the Purple Moon Kingdom and Jewel Kingdom, who were lucky enough to survive the attack of the wind blades, just now changed their expressions. Many of them were even filled with despair. Just now, if not for the scarlet lightning and purple flames blocking most of the attack, all of them might have been killed by the two wind blades just now. Even so, quite a few of them died under the wind blades just now. What made them feel even more hopeless was that there was actually a king-level combatant from an enemy kingdom blocking their path, ready to kill them. No matter how many tricks they had up their sleeves, in front of a true king-level combatant, it was still not enough. This was no longer a gap that could be made up for with tricks. There was a natural gap between king-level combatants and them, and the gap between the two was not something that could be made up for with tricks. To actually have such a special magic weapon, no wonder you were able to escape. Looking at the people of the Scarlet Kingdom and Purple Moon Kingdom, the man said, "But I'm very sorry, all of you must die here." His voice was calm, and there was no strong, killing intent. However, those who were stared at by him could not help but feel a chill run down their backs and break out in cold sweat. "Sir Stanley, is the Flame Kingdom not afraid of our three kingdoms' revenge for doing this?" The Scarlet Prince Lars suppressed his anger and said, as one of the top combatants of the Flame Kingdom, the Scarlet Kingdom naturally paid close attention to him, and he recognized the identity of the man in front of him. Revenge? The king-level combatant of the Flame Kingdom, Stanley Grinton, sneered. "Feel free to come. The Flame Kingdom is never afraid of any retaliation." "Sir Stanley, does the Flame Kingdom really want to fight to the death with the three of us? Although the Flame Kingdom is stronger than any of our kingdoms, if the three kingdoms join forces, I'm afraid they won't be able to withstand it, right?" Francis said, similarly suppressing his anger. "You'll know whether or not I can block it later. But before that, you definitely won't be able to see it." The Flame Kingdom's king-class expert, Stanley Grinton, did not want to say anything more. His eyes turned extremely cold as he prepared to kill the people from the Scarlet Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom. After all, they were still in the Jewel Kingdom. In order to avoid any accidents, the other party wanted to kill them as soon as possible. At this moment, Lars and Francis took out another forbidden weapon without any discussion, simultaneously attacking the king-level expert of the Flame Kingdom, Stanley Grinton. The two of them actually had more than one forbidden artifact. Pitter-patter. The giant crimson lightning bird was dozens of meters in size. Lightning shot out from its body in all directions. The terrifying sound of thunder spread out. Just the sound alone was enough to cause the surrounding ground to crack inch by inch. Whoosh! The giant purple flame beast seemed to have come from an underground world of magma. It did not touch the ground, but with it as the center, the surrounding ground was scorched black and melted. Two forbidden weapons and two king-class experts joined forces and attacked the Flame Kingdom's king-class expert, Stanley Grinton. Along the way, nothing could stop them. Trees, rocks, and the ground. Everything was destroyed under the terrifying destructive power. Boom! The two attacks collided with the Flame Kingdom's king-class expert, Stanley Grinton, and finally spread out 1,000 meters, creating a huge ravine that extended for 1,000 meters. Did they succeed? Many people faintly felt anticipation. Two forbidden weapons were equivalent to two king-class experts joining forces. Although the opponent was a king-class expert, he was only one person. Perhaps he had been injured in the previous attack. An injured king-class expert was also extremely terrifying, but at least they had a chance of winning. However, in the next moment, everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Futile struggle. A voice rang out. Everyone looked over and saw a figure appear beside the ravine formed by the two forbidden weapons. It was the Flame Kingdom's king-class expert, Stanley Grinton. He was completely unharmed. There was not a single wound on his body. Even his clothes were not damaged in the slightest. Coldly looking at the people of the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Scarlet Kingdom, Stanley Grinton's eyes were full of contempt. Two forbidden artifacts and two king-level experts were attacking together. Even if he was hit, he would still be injured. Unfortunately, only two desolate blood warriors had attacked. Their reaction speed was limited. Before they could attack, he had already calmly dodged. As expected, it's useless. Gray's heart trembled. The forbidden weapons were indeed very limited against king-class experts. Although the forbidden weapons were comparable to a king-class expert's attack in terms of power, a king-class expert's reaction speed was clearly enough to dodge the forbidden weapons before they attacked. It was almost impossible to hit a king-class expert with a forbidden weapon, unless it was under special circumstances. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Without batting an eyelid, a vine spread out from under Gray's feet. It first spread under his feet, then spread to Sophia, Francis, Hillia, Zaloyan, Jessica, Gavin Kenneth, and the Addison siblings. He was already prepared to use spatial teleportation, but it could only teleport a limited number of people. These people were either his friends or people he was familiar with. He naturally chose to save these people first. As for the others, it was not that he did not want to save them, but that there was nothing he could do. You should all be on your way. A large amount of green light gathered around the Flame Kingdom's king-class expert, Stanley Grinton. With him as the center, the entire sky turned green. Then, all the green light turned into extremely condensed green wind blades one after another. They attacked together, enveloping all the people from the Scarlet Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom. Gray's expression changed. He immediately prepared to use spatial teleportation, but at this moment, something unexpected happened. Whoosh! The surrounding ground rose from the ground, and thick rocks appeared. Finally, a hemispherical barrier was formed, enveloping all the people from the Scarlet Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom. Clang, clang, clang. The hemispherical rock barrier did not look as hard as steel, but when the countless green wind blades hit it, a metallic sound was heard, and all the wind blades were deflected. In the end, the green wind blades created a huge crater with a diameter of hundreds of meters on the ground around the hemispherical rock. However, the inside of the hemispherical rock was intact. Who? The Flame Kingdom's king-class expert. Tyrus's cold eyes flashed with surprise, and he suddenly became vigilant. He was very sure that this khaki-colored rock was not a forbidden weapon, but was completely constructed with energy. To be able to block his attack, it must be a king-class expert. In other words, there was a king-class expert hiding in the dark at this moment, attacking a few juniors. How impressive! The hemispherical rock disappeared. Suddenly, a group of people appeared beside the people from the Scarlet Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom. They walked out of the ground, and the ground seemed to have turned into water. It was as if they had come out of the water. This group of people was Glenn Y. Austin and the others. However, there was one more person among them at this time. This was an old man in khaki-colored clothes. He looked coldly at the Flame Kingdom's king-class expert, Stanley Grinton. Krell, it's you. You should be in the Imperial City. How did you get here so quickly? Seeing this old man, the Flame Kingdom's king-class expert, Stanley Grinton, frowned and said, logically speaking, the support of the Jewel Kingdom's king-class expert should not have arrived so quickly. However, the other party appeared here so quickly, which was beyond his expectations. However, he quickly thought of the reason. Sound transmission stone. The Jewel Kingdom has a sound transmission stone that only existed during the Empire era. It can be used for communication. Although not entirely correct, it's close. The Jewel Kingdom's king-class expert, Krell Austin, snorted coldly. The sound transmission stone was a rune item that appeared during the Empire era. It could be used for long-distance communication. However, it was very difficult to make. Not only did it require the extremely precious sound transmission stone as the material, but the runes that needed to be drawn were also very complicated. Such an item was extremely rare even during the Empire era, and it was completely cut off during the Kingdom era. It was the same for the Jewel Kingdom. However, the Jewel Kingdom was fortunate enough to obtain a sound transmission stone. After the Rune Master tried to recreate it, although it was not successfully refined and could not be used for long-distance communication, it could allow two places thousands of miles apart to sense each other. When one side was activated, the other side would emit noise. It was through this method that the Jewel Kingdom's royal family noticed the change and immediately sent a king-class expert over. Since you dare to come to the Jewel Kingdom, you will stay here today. The Jewel Kingdom's king-class expert, Krell Austin, said sternly with a murderous look. The Tri-Kingdom Exchange was organized by the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom. Now that such a thing had happened, the Jewel Kingdom was under great pressure. They had to give the Scarlet Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom an explanation, and the Flame Kingdom's king-class expert was obviously a very good explanation. With just you? The Flame Kingdom's king-class expert, Stanley Grinton, sneered. How about me too? Suddenly, an old man in gray clothes appeared. He had white hair and an old face, but his body exuded a terrifying aura that made people's hair stand on end. It was as if the old man in gray clothes was not a person, but a terrifying king beast that was more than 10 meters long. Chapter 444. Wilbur Austin, seeing the gray-clothed elder, the Flame Kingdom elder, Stanley Grinton's expression changed. Without hesitation, he stepped into the air and turned to leave. You'll die here today. The gray-clothed elder Wilbur Austin and the yellow-clothed elder Krell Austin snorted coldly. They also stepped into the air and chased after him, as if they were stepping on invisible stairs. Swish! 3 figures rose into the air. One was running at the front, while the other 2 were chasing after him. In the blink of an eye, they had crossed several mountains. Stanley Grinton was extremely fast. Although he did not have wings, he was like a giant bird soaring in the sky. The 2 kings from the Jewel Kingdom were not slow either. They fell behind Stanley Grinton. No matter how fast Stanley Grinton accelerated, he could not get rid of them. I'll stop him, the yellow-clothed elder Krell Austin said. Then, on the ground far away, a large amount of soil floated up and turned into a giant palm that covered the sky. It slammed towards Stanley Grinton. If he was hit by such a huge palm, even with the defense of a king, he would definitely be injured. Stanley Grinton's figure paused in midair and dodged to the side. Boom! On the ground, a giant palm print with a diameter of hundreds of meters appeared. Under this palm, a palm-shaped basin was formed. After dodging the giant palm, Stanley Grinton fled to the other side. At this moment, the gray-clothed elder Wilbur Austin took the opportunity to chase after him. A large amount of water condensed in the air and compressed into a giant fish beast with sharp teeth. It roared and attacked Stanley Grinton. Although it was a giant fish made of water, its power could be imagined when it was used by a king. Stanley Grinton did not dare to be careless. He drew his sword and slashed out. A green wind blade that was dozens of meters long slashed toward the fish beast made of water. Poochie, the fish beast made of water, was split in half by the wind blade. The wind blade also collapsed after splitting the fish beast. The water splashed like a cannonball, and the wind blade fragments like a sharp blade. They whistled and sputtered in all directions. The surrounding area was immediately filled with deep holes, as if it had been hit by a cannonball. There was even a small mountain that was riddled with holes from the front to the back. Finally, it collapsed and turned into a pile of mud. This was the true power of a battle between kings. The collision of the forbidden weapons earlier was not a true battle between kings. Since the user's strength had not reached the king level, it was easy for them to be affected by the forbidden weapon's power. The king-level experts who forged forbidden weapons would normally restrain the power of the forbidden weapon. Although it would not easily injure the user, its power would be reduced. When two king-level powerhouses fought, there was no need to consider such things. This was the true power of a king-level powerhouse. Fortunately, the two lords from the Jewel Kingdom arrived in time. Otherwise, we would have died today. The sky was slightly bright. Looking at the three kings fighting in the distance, the people from the Scarlet Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom heaved a sigh of relief. They wiped the cold sweat from their foreheads, fear still lingering in their hearts. If they had arrived a little later, all of them would have died here. Although the two kingdoms had quite a number of Desolate-level kings, including a few who were at the second level of Desolate level, a king could not be defeated by numbers. With the two kings from the Jewel Kingdom here, it seems like we don't need to use the purple ring to teleport away. Gray also couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. His back was already soaked in cold sweat. Although the purple ring had the ability to teleport, he was not sure if it could teleport away in front of King. A king's reaction was too fast. It was entirely possible that they could kill them during the teleportation. This was what he had been worried about. Now that the two kings from the Jewel Kingdom had arrived, the king from the Flame Kingdom could not even protect himself. Naturally, there was no need for them to teleport away. Rumble, rumble. The battle between the three king-level masters was still ongoing. Rocks were collapsing, and gullies appeared on the ground. Each gully was as wide as a riverbed. The landscape in that area was undergoing drastic changes. This was a battle between kings that could slightly change the landscape. Under the siege of the two kings from the Jewel Kingdom, Stanley Grinton, the king from the Flame Kingdom, was obviously at a disadvantage. There were many injuries on his body. The most serious one was on his abdomen, where he had been hit by a meteorite. His skin was lacerated and his flesh was badly mangled. "Krell, Wilbur, don't push me too far." Stanley Grinton roared angrily after being injured consecutively. "Push me too far? You sneaked into the Jewel Kingdom and tried to assassinate us. And now you think we're pushing you too far?" The yellow-robed elder, Krell Austin, snorted coldly. With a wave of his battle axe, large meteors fell from the sky, nearly drowning Stanley Grinton. "If you push me too far, I'll take you down with me," Stanley Grinton said, with a ferocious expression as he waved his sword at the incoming meteorites. Countless wind blades slashed out, shattering all the meteorites. "Take me down with you? You'll have to have the ability first." Just as Stanley Grinton shattered all the meteors, before he could even catch his breath, the gray-robed old man, Wilbur Austin, attacked. With a slash of his blade, a huge fish beast appeared and slammed into Stanley Grinton. Danny Grinton tried to dodge, but he was scratched by the fish beast's fin. A deep wound appeared on his body. "You forced me." Stanley Grinton knew that he would be exhausted to death if this continued. His expression was ferocious as a mysterious, incomplete pattern of wind appeared in his body. Then, with him as the center, a terrifying aura spread out. In an instant, the aura he exuded was more than a few times stronger than before. Stanley Grinton is using his blood skill. He's going all out. In the distance, Gray and the others who were watching the battle couldn't help but become serious. Since the Four Kingdoms didn't have a complete set of blood skills, to the Four Kingdoms, blood skills were a desperate move that could kill 1,000 enemies at the cost of 800 of their own forces. Obviously, the Flame Kingdom's king-level expert, Stanley Grinton, had been forced into a corner. Otherwise, he would not have used his blood skill. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Before the spectators in the distance could cry out in alarm, the great change had already occurred. In an instant, a terrifying tornado appeared and covered the sky like a giant pillar. It expanded rapidly and attacked the two king-level experts of the Jewel Kingdom. Puff! Puff! The two king-level experts retreated as if they were avoiding a snake or a scorpion. However, the tornado expanded too quickly and they were unavoidably caught in it. Blood splattered everywhere. Crack! Rocks and trees spun in the sky and were crushed to pieces. It was impossible to see what was happening inside the tornado. What happened to the two king-level experts of the Jewel Kingdom? After a while, the tornado disappeared and a huge crater with a diameter of at least 1,000 meters appeared. The two king-level experts of the Jewel Kingdom were not in the crater. Only the Flame Kingdom's king-level expert, Stanley Grinton, could be seen. His clothes were tattered as he staggered to his feet. Puff! Stanley Grinton spat out a mouthful of blood. Forcefully using an incomplete blood skill had caused him great damage. His already heavy injuries had worsened. Lord Wilbur, Lord Krell. The unexpected turn of events caused Gray and the others to change their expressions. They had not expected the battle to take such a turn. The two king-level experts of the Flame Kingdom, who had the upper hand, were now unsure of whether they were dead or alive after their opponents used their blood skills. A battle was not as simple as comparing numbers. There were too many variables. As long as it was not the end, one could not make a conclusion. Although he was heavily injured, Stanley Grinton laughed proudly. He had killed two king-level experts at the cost of being heavily injured. This was a battle record that he could be proud of. It's good that you're still here. His eyesight was very good. Even though they were a few mountains away, he could still see Gray and the others. Gray and the others felt their scalps go numb. Even though their opponents were heavily injured, they still felt that they had no chance of winning. It's too early to be happy. Suddenly, a voice rang out. Hearing this voice, everyone's anxious hearts relaxed. This was the voice of the Jewel Kingdom's king-level expert, Krell Austin. It was obvious that he had survived the attack just now. Looking over, two figures could be seen rising from the huge pit in the distance. They were the two king-level experts of the Jewel Kingdom. Judging from their blood-stained clothes, the two of them should have been injured, but their injuries should not be fatal. In the end, they should have hidden underground to avoid the giant tornado. Stanley Grinton was shocked. He could not believe that he had not been able to kill his opponents. He turned around and tried to escape. However, he was heavily injured and his speed was not as fast as usual. Krell Austin, who was dressed in khaki clothes, chased after him and swung his battle axe down. Stanley Grinton blocked the attack with his green greatsword. However, he was forced to retreat. With every step he took, cracks would appear on the ground. At this moment, Wilbur Austin appeared behind Stanley Grinton and slashed Stanley Grinton's back, leaving a deep wound on Stanley Grinton's back. Pooh! 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 Under the siege of Wilbur Austin and Krell Austin, Stanley Grinton could not escape. His body was covered in blood, and it was difficult for him to resist. Finally, Wilbur Austin stabbed him in the heart. Cough, cough. I can't believe I'm going to die in your hands. Even though his heart was crushed, Stanley Grinton did not die immediately. The strong body of a king-level expert gave him a stronger life force than others. However, I'll wait. You'll come to accompany me soon. Stanley Grinton's eyes lost their luster. A strange smile hung on his originally ferocious face. It was as if he had seen a future where his hopes had come true at the moment of his death. Chapter 445. Pata. Stanley Grinton's lifeless body fell to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Good job. Everyone who saw this from afar clenched their fists. Their faces were filled with excitement and joy. They had been assassinated by the Flame Kingdom for no reason. Their close friends were either dead or alive. Naturally, they hated the Flame Kingdom to the core. Now that they saw the king-class expert who was chasing them not long ago die, they were extremely happy. The loss of a king-level expert would definitely cause the Raging Flames Kingdom great pain. Seeing the Raging Flames Kingdom in pain, they finally felt a sense of satisfaction. Lord Krell, Lord Wilbur. The two king-class experts of the Jewel Kingdom had plundered the Flame Kingdom's king-class expert's rune portal bag and items. They then buried the corpse on the spot and walked over. Gray and the rest greeted the two respectfully. Everyone was very grateful to the two. If the two hadn't appeared in time, they would all be dead. Even a king-class expert would find it hard to break through the rune mechanism of the Emerald Castle in a short period of time. How did the Flame Kingdom break through it so easily? Who betrayed the royal family? Krell Austin frowned and asked. Although he had met up with the Jewel Kingdom first, he was pressed for time. When he found that the Purple Moon Kingdom and Scarlet Kingdom were in danger, he didn't have time to ask about how the castle was broken through. It's Brady Randolph. He's a spy from the Flame Kingdom. He's the one who shut down the rune mechanism of the Emerald Castle, allowing the Flame Kingdom to easily invade the castle. Jelenway Austin's eyes were filled with hatred as she spoke. This was the first time she hated someone so much. Her comrade, who was laughing and chatting with her not long ago, had died forever. He could no longer laugh and chat with her. It's him. I didn't expect him to be the traitor. Krell Austin's eyes were filled with coldness. Randolph was no stranger to him. Randolph was an outsider who served the royal family, but he was in the second stage of the desolation level. It was extremely rare for outsiders to serve the royal family. Even though he had been cultivating in seclusion all year round, he had heard of this person. However, he did not expect that this person was actually a spy sent by the Flame Kingdom to infiltrate the Jewel Kingdom. The two king-level masters took the lead and hurried back. Gray and the others followed behind. They also returned to Jadeite Castle. With the support of two king-level experts in front and the Jewel Kingdom's reinforcements behind them, it was time to be afraid of the Blaze Fawn. Before leaving, Gray glanced at the place where Stanley Grinton's corpse was buried, and then quickly followed the group back to Jadeite Castle. When Gray and the others arrived at the castle, all they saw was the ruins of the castle. Aside from them, there were only a few survivors. They didn't see anyone from Blaze Fawn. Seeing Krell Austin and Wilbur Austin, the remaining three king-level masters and the rest of the people from Blaze Fawn fled in different directions. At present, Krell Austin, Wilbur Austin, and the three king-class experts in the castle were pursuing these people. The various kingdoms had sorrowful looks on their faces as they counted their casualties. Soon, the statistics were out. In this assassination attempt by the Blaze Fawn, 12 people from the Purple Moon Kingdom, 14 from the Jewel Kingdom, and 10 from the Scarlet Kingdom had died. Almost half of the younger generation and the older generation who had come to participate in the Three Kingdoms exchange had been lost. This was a huge casualty ratio. What saddened the Three Kingdoms even more was that the younger generation who had died were the most outstanding disciples of their respective kingdoms. Now that so many of them had died, it was imaginable that the number of experts produced by the Three Kingdoms would be reduced in the future. We can't just let this go. We must take revenge. Regardless of whether it was the older generation or the younger generation, everyone was grieving. This matter won't end just like this. The future successors of Francis, Jelenway, and Lars Kingdoms clenched their fists and gritted their teeth as they spoke. It was obvious that after suffering such a huge loss, the Purple Moon Kingdom, Jewel Kingdom, and Scarlet Kingdom would definitely take action. Because everyone was heavily injured, they set up tents near the ruins of the castle and went inside to rest. After entering the tent, Gray closed it and left a spatial teleportation symbol inside. The next moment, his figure disappeared from the tent. When he reappeared, he was over 20 kilometers away, not far from where the three king-level masters were fighting. When he was returning, he found an opportunity to separate from the others and left a spatial teleportation symbol here. Walking near the corpse of the Flame Kingdom's king-level master, Stanley Grinton, Gray slashed out with a few wind blades. The soil was cut open, and Stanley Grinton's corpse was revealed. It's reasonable to say that a king-level master has already exceeded the limits of corpse control, but it's worth a try. Gray's current corpse control ability was obtained from a berserk-level blood fiend. According to his speculations, he could at most control a desolate-level blood fiend, not a king-level existence. However, now that a king-level master's corpse was placed in front of him, Gray could not help but want to give it a try. After all, even if he did not succeed, he would not lose out. As Gray approached the corpse, a faint pressure spread out, but the feeling was not strong. With his current physical strength, it was naturally impossible for him to not be able to get close to a king-level master's corpse. Moreover, the pressure emitted by this king-level master's corpse was far less intense than that of the skeleton he had encountered in the ruins. Now that he thought about it, the skeleton he had encountered in the ruins was probably not a simple king-level master skeleton. It was very likely that it was the skeleton of a master above the king level. Using his corpse control ability, the ball of corpse control slid into Stanley Grinton's mouth. Gray waited quietly. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. After a full half an hour, the corpse still did not have the slightest reaction. Did it fail? Gray raised his eyebrows. From the looks of it, his corpse control ability had failed. Just as Gray was about to give up and bury the corpse again, something unexpected happened. Patter! The originally motionless corpse suddenly trembled like a person who had been electrocuted. Its limbs could not help but move randomly, and then it slowly stood up. It worked. Gray felt as if he could control his own arm. It was as if a single thought from him could make this king-level master's corpse do as he wished. Gray's eyes lit up. It was obvious that he had succeeded. His corpse control ability could actually control a king-level master's corpse. It seemed that his previous understanding of corpse control was still somewhat wrong. The limit of his corpse control ability was not a single desolate level corpse, but a single desolate level corpse. However, its level could be increased. He just did not know if this increase was limitless, or if he could control corpses above the king level. Of course, there was no way to prove this point. Up until now, the strongest person in the Four Kingdoms had only been a king-level master. No one had reached the king level, so naturally, there was no way for him to prove this point. A king-level master's corpse. Although its combat power is definitely not comparable to a king-level master, it is definitely comparable to a third desolate level master. Looking at the king-level master's corpse in front of him, Gray felt a sense of joy and satisfaction. They had been assassinated for no apparent reason, and they had been chased by a king-level fighter. But in the end, they had reaped great rewards. They had proven that the ability to control corpses was also useful to king-level fighters. Furthermore, the king-level fighter who had tried to kill them had become his puppet. He felt the thrill of revenge. After returning this time, I could try to explore the secret room in the territory's castle. Let's recover first. Using the reverse nurturing ability, the king-level master's originally hideous wounds slowly healed until they were as good as new. In the end, Stanley Gritton's corpse was undamaged. Aside from his slightly dull eyes, he looked no different from a real person. If it had been nighttime, no one would have thought that this was a dead person. There is no doubt that this king-level master's corpse, which could display the combat power of a third desolate level master, would become his greatest trump card. It would become his strongest trump card. I wonder if the metallization ability would work on a king-level master. Gray tried to metallize the king-level master's corpse. Suddenly, the king-level master's corpse changed. The skin all over his body turned a silver color, as if his entire body was made of metal. It can be metallized, and after metallization, the color actually turned silver. Looking at the silver-looking king-level master's corpse, Gray was slightly surprised. The metallization ability. At the murderous and berserk levels, a person's body would turn black. Now, after metallization, Zero's body would turn black. At the barbarian and desolate levels, a person's body would turn bronze after metallization. This was the case for Gray when he was at the barbarian level, as well as the bronzeback dragon when he was at the desolate level. This time, the metallization of the king-level expert's corpse turned silver. In other words, the change in color after metallization wasn't based on Gray's cultivation level, but on the target's cultivation level. With my strength, I can't tell if the king-level master's body has changed after metallization. However, the color of metallization is different for different levels. Does this mean that metallization is a permanent ability? From Gray's point of view, the color of metallization was not based on a user's level. This meant that metallization was a permanent ability. This meant that the ability would still be useful when Gray reached the king level. I have a much better chance of investigating that secret room. The king-level master's corpse had cultivated wind elemental blood techniques, which were not good at defense. However, after metallization, his body's defense was probably comparable to a king-level master's. With such a strong physical defense, Gray had a much better chance of investigating that secret room. Chapter 446. Gray stored the king-level powerhouse's corpse into his purple ring and filled it with dirt. He then destroyed the teleportation coordinates and teleported back to his tent. After checking the tent and confirming that no one had entered, Gray erased the teleportation coordinates in the tent. Although Fitch Violet, Sophia, Francis, and the others already knew that he had the ability to control corpses, the Jewel Kingdom and the Scarlet Kingdom did not know. He didn't want the people of the two kingdoms to know about this. After all, this ability was a great trump card for him, especially now that his ability to control corpses was able to control king-level beings. This trump card was even more important. He trusted Fitch Violet, Sophia, Francis, and the others, but he did not trust the people of the Jewel Kingdom and the Scarlet Kingdom. It was because of this reason that he did not try to control the corpse immediately after Stanley Grin's death. 2 days later, in a remote town in the Flame Kingdom, a man in old clothes walked around the town and finally came to a slum with dilapidated houses. After looking around cautiously, he knocked on the door of one of the houses. His knocking was not continuous. He stopped after 2 knocks, then 3 knocks, then 2 knocks, and 3 knocks alternated, as if it was accompanied by the beat of music. After a while, the door of the house opened and a man in the same old clothes appeared at the door. After letting the man in, he stuck his head out and looked at the door for a moment before closing the door again. "What's the situation outside?" There were more than 10 people in the house, all of them wearing old clothes. However, their physiques were stronger and taller than ordinary people, which made the scene feel very out of place. Among them, an old man looked at the man who came in and asked, "As expected, the border has been sealed." The old man's position among the 10 or so people should be quite high. The man who came in answered respectfully, "How are the 4 lords?" The old man continued to ask, "Lord Stanley is dead." "What? Lord Stanley is dead?" Everyone in the room was shocked and looked at the man who came in. Yes, he encountered 2 king-level powerhouses from the Jewel Kingdom who came as reinforcements. Under their pursuit, he could not escape and was killed on the spot. What about the other 3 lords? No news yet. The man who came in shook his head. This is not right. The Jewel Kingdom's reinforcements came too quickly. There may be spies from the Jewel Kingdom in the Blaze Fawn. We cannot stay here. Move immediately. The old man's expression was uncertain. Hearing this, the 10 or so people stood. Suddenly, bang! With a loud bang, the wooden door flew into the room and fell to the ground with a thud. At the same time, a blue figure rushed into the room. "Who's there?" The expressions of the dozen or so people changed, and they all reached for their weapons. A long spear's response. Puff! The man who was closest to the blue figure did not even have time to touch his weapon before his heart was pierced by the long spear. Blood splattered everywhere. His hand that was reaching for his weapon froze on the spot, and his body went limp. The man next to him was shocked. He pulled out his sword, which was covered in a green light. A strong wind raged in the room as he slashed his sword at the blue figure. However, before his sword could land, the blue figure had already pulled out the long spear and pierced his throat. Go to hell! A bolt of lightning and a bolt of flame attacked the blue figure. The blue figure was like a phantom, disappearing from the spot. The flames and lightning landed on the bodies of the 2 men who had been killed, and the 2 men's bodies turned into charcoal. "We've been discovered. Scatter and run," the old man yelled. When the people in the room heard this, they did not hesitate to smash through the walls and rush out from all directions of the house. However, what was unexpected was that the old man did not smash through the walls and rush out like the other people. Instead, he stayed in the room and observed the outside through the hole he had made. Puff, puff! The 10 or so people broke the wall and rushed out of the room. What they saw was a person who had been waiting around the room. There were young people and old people. The 2 sides immediately started fighting. The one who had the upper hand was the person waiting outside. Among the 10 or so people, a few were killed on the spot. Only then did the old man rush out of the room and choose a place with fewer people to escape. These 10 or so people were obviously used as bait. Humph! In the direction he was escaping, there was only a black-haired young man. He had a sinister smile on his face. As he ran, he slashed out with the long red sword in his hand. Suddenly, a red flame that was like a river burned the surrounding ground with scorching heat. It attacked the black-haired young man. This was a desolate level attack. He was a desolate blood warrior. He believed that under this attack, the other party would definitely die. There were very few young people who could block a desolate level attack. He did not believe that he would meet one. As long as he could break out of the encirclement, he believed that with the speed of a desolate blood warrior, he could definitely escape. However, he did not notice the cold eyes of the black-haired young man under the red flame. If he had noticed, he would not be so confident. Whoosh! Facing the oncoming red flames, Gray's expression was calm. Suddenly, a huge river of black fog appeared in front of him. It was dozens of meters wide, and, compared to the size of the crimson flames, it was like a small river. Chi. Under the huge river of black fog, the red flame river was like a flame that was drowned by water. It was extinguished in an instant. The huge river of black fog did not slow down and crashed towards the old man. Desolate level. Level 2. The old man was shocked as he looked at the river of black fog that was still charging at him after the river of red flames had been extinguished. He originally thought that he had chosen the weakest person. He did not expect that he might be the strongest among the people who came to besiege him. He was actually a level 2 desolate level blood warrior. A feeling called regret arose in his heart. At the same time, he was extremely shocked. How could someone at such a young age have the strength of a level 2 desolate level? He was surrounded by the black fog river. His clothes and flesh were quickly disappearing. He let out a painful roar and tried to break free from the black fog river. However, he could not break free. When the river of black mist disappeared, his figure was revealed. At this moment, his body was badly mutilated and blood was flowing everywhere. His body was covered with shocking wounds. Before he could catch his breath, he saw his opponent rushing towards him with a huge black sword. He attacked with a long river of fire and retreated as if he was avoiding a snake or a scorpion. However, the next moment, the long river of fire was cut in half by the huge black sword. His opponent rushed over quickly. Whoosh! A huge black sword slashed towards him. However, because of his previous injuries, his movements were slowed down. The huge black sword kept enlarging in his eyes. Puff! The huge black sword slashed across his neck. Blood splattered. His head flew up, and his body fell down powerlessly. This guy has become stronger. A spear pierced through the throat of a barbarian blood warrior, killing him instantly. Sophia looked in Gray's direction, a trace of astonishment appearing on her beautiful face. A genuine desolate blood warrior was killed so easily by him. In the process, he was not injured at all. Compared to the battle with the Flame Kingdom, his strength had obviously increased by leaps and bounds. After a while, the fighting stopped near the ruined house. More than 10 corpses lay on the ground silently. There were more than 10 people standing near the ruins. They were Gray, Sophia, Zeloyan, Jessia, Gavin, Elijah, and a few elders from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. They were here because they were participating in the hunt for the Inferno Fawn. This was already the 3rd time they had killed the remaining members of the Inferno Fawn. After the last assassination, the other 3 king-class experts of the Inferno Fawn had successfully escaped from the Jewel Kingdom. Some of the remaining members of the Inferno Fawn had escaped, while others had scattered to various parts of the Jewel Kingdom. Gray and the others naturally hated the Inferno Fawn. Hence, they had applied to the Jewel Kingdom to participate in the hunt. The Jewel Kingdom's royal family will send people to deal with this. Let's leave this place first. A man in his 50s or 60s said. The man had a medium build. His purple hair was tinged with gray. The Purple Moon Kingdom had sent a total of 2 second-stage desolate blood warriors to participate in the 3 kingdoms exchange. He was one of them. Elder, where are we going next? Sophia asked. She had just experienced a massacre, but her blue battle armor was spotless. There was not a speck of dust or blood on it. She looked like an elegant noble lady. She did not fit in with the dozens of corpses lying around. Let's go to a hidden stronghold of the Flame Kingdom spies. The people hiding in the stronghold should not be weak. Be careful. Yes. Everyone nodded ferociously. Their eyes flashed coldly. This was their revenge. A day later, Gray and the others appeared in a forest in the Jewel Kingdom. In the forest, the terrain was undulating. From time to time, they would come across hills that were 100 to 200 meters tall. After climbing over a few hills, they saw a simple stronghold in the forest. The walls were made of wooden fences. The houses were made of wood. At the entrance, and on top of some wooden towers, there were figures in leather armor. Some of them were holding knives, some swords, and some had bows on their backs. Their weapons were not uniform and looked very messy. This was a bandit group. They were not large in scale and only had about 100 people. They would only rob ordinary merchants passing by. They were one of the many bandit groups in the Jewel Kingdom and were very inconspicuous. However, few people knew that such a small bandit group had a second stage desolate level desolate blood warrior. This was a stronghold that the Flame Kingdom had planted in the Jewel Kingdom to gather information. The bandit group was just a cover. Their real identity was the Jewel Kingdom spies. Chapter 447. Do it. Following the orders of the desolate blood warrior from the Purple Moon Kingdom, Gray and the others lurked towards the simple stronghold in front of them. Swoosh! Sophia's body was shrouded in blue light. Like a blue phantom, she appeared at the door. Puff, puff, puff. She did not hold a gun. Instead, she held a dagger that was more than 10 centimeters long. Before the few people at the door could react, she quickly slit their throats with the dagger. These few people had only gone through some training and were slightly stronger than ordinary people. Naturally, they were powerless in front of her. Within the stronghold, the people on the 2 minarets near the wall heard the commotion and looked towards the direction of the stronghold gate. Seeing that their companions were all killed, they immediately wanted to warn them. However, at that moment, 2 sharp blades made of metal powder pierced their hearts at the same time, killing them before they could make sound. It was Zeloyan. As a berserker, he had the ability to manipulate metal. Naturally, dealing with 2 bandits was a piece of cake. Some people quickly rushed into the stronghold through the gate and began a silent killing. Puff, puff, puff. They were like silent gods of death, killing the bandits before they could even make a sound. These bandits were only slightly stronger than ordinary people. The strongest one was only comparable to a lower blood warrior. In front of these people, who were at least berserkers, they were naturally powerless. Enemy attack. It was only when they went deep into the stronghold and encountered a berserker that they heard a voice. After all, they had not experienced professional assassination and did not have the corresponding ability suitable for assassination. They could not silently sneak up to the enemy, which was why they were discovered by the berserker. They're even berserker. It seems that the information from the Jewel Kingdom was right. Gavin Kenneth said, with a murderous aura, after killing the berserker with a single slash. Swoosh! Swoosh! At that moment, several people rushed towards him. He swung his sword, and a violent chill spread out. Ice quickly spread on the ground around him. The people who rushed towards him suddenly turned into ice sculptures and froze to death. Swoosh! Upon hearing that Gavin Kenneth's side had been exposed, Gray no longer concealed his whereabouts. With a black greatsword in hand, he quickly rushed to the building in the middle of the stockade. Hearing the commotion, 2 brute blood warriors immediately rushed towards him, one in front and one behind. Puff! Gray didn't dodge. Instead, he slashed out with his black greatsword, cutting the barbarian blood warrior in front of him into 2. Then, he took a step forward, and his huge black sword met the other barbarian blood warrior who was slashing at him with a long blade flickering with lightning. Crack! Under the attack of the huge black sword, the long saber that was flickering with lightning broke into 2 with a cracking sound. The huge black sword didn't stop there and slashed diagonally at the barbarian blood warrior. Puff! Blood splattered everywhere. The barbarian blood warrior was cut into 2 from his left shoulder to his right waist. Who are you? At this moment, more than 10 people rushed out of the house in the middle. One of them was wearing a green battle suit. Judging from his running speed, he should be a desolate blood warrior. Judging Gray's strength, he took the initiative to greet him. He shouted at Gray with killing intent. I'm the one who wants your lives. Gray's voice was as cold as the winter wind. With a slash of his sword, a huge black fog river rushed out, covering the sky and the earth. It swept toward the man in green battle suit. Feeling the terror of the black fog river, the man in green battle suit's expression changed. A huge mud wall rose from the ground in front of him. It was 2 stories high and a few meters thick, blocking the black fog river. However, under the black fog river, the extremely sturdy mud wall collapsed and shattered in an instant. Pung! Behind the mud wall, the man in green battle suit was hit by the black fog. He slid back dozens of meters. When he reappeared, there were many injuries on his body. Many of them were badly mutilated. He couldn't help but groan in pain. Desolate level 2. Blood dripped from his body. The man in green battle suit endured the pain and looked at Gray in shock. Schwa! Gray's eyes were cold. With a huge black sword in his hand, he quickly approached the man in green battle suit. The man in green battle suit looked dignified. He stomped on the ground fiercely. Then, rows of sharp spikes rose from the ground near Gray. They were a few meters long and pierced towards Gray. Gray's expression didn't change. He used metal eyes. His skin was covered with a layer of metal. The spikes, piercing his body, made a sound of metal colliding. It was as if they were piercing a steel plate. They couldn't go any further. Crack! The black greatsword in Gray's hand swept out, breaking the spikes on his body. Then, he slashed out with his sword, and a vast river of black mist appeared, covering the sky and covering the earth as it surged towards the man in green battle armor. Knowing the power, the man in green battle suit wanted to dodge. However, he couldn't. He was sucked into the black fog like a person in weak water. The flesh and blood on his body were rapidly melting away. When the black mist disappeared and his figure was revealed, there was not a single part of his body that was intact. His body was bleeding. His face was a mess of flesh and blood. It was impossible to see his face clearly. Puff! Gray rushed forward. The huge black sword pierced the man's heart. The man's eyes were filled with unwillingness. His body fell weakly. Gray pulled out his sword. His expression didn't change. He began to look for his next target. 3 mixed abilities. Although the Wind bloodline was only at barbarian level, its power was only at desolate level 2. However, it was still the destructive power of desolate level 2. With the destructive power of desolate level 2, facing a desolate level 1 desolate blood warrior, it was naturally easy. Suddenly, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Around Gray, dozens of vines rose from the ground. They grew to half a meter thick and dozens of meters long. The surface was covered with scales. They were like dozens of pythons. They attacked Gray together. In the face of the sudden attack, although Gray was shocked, he still immediately responded. In front of him, a long river of black fog appeared. It rushed towards the vines while he retreated quickly. Chi. The long river of black fog had an extremely strong crushing power. Anything that came into contact with it would be crushed into powder. After colliding with the long river of black fog, the vines quickly melted. However, the vines were stronger than expected. While they were being crushed, they also consumed a large amount of the black fog. Finally, the long river of black fog disappeared. A huge vine broke through and hit Gray. Pung! Gray kept retreating. His battle suit was damaged where the vine hit him. His flesh was torn. He was injured. With his metallization, even a desolate level desolate blood warrior would find it difficult to damage his defense. However, he was injured by the aftermath. Desolate level 2. Looking at the wounds on his body, Gray's expression turned serious. The power of this plant had definitely reached desolate level 2. It was very likely that a desolate level blood warrior had attacked him. Although he knew that the stronghold of the Flame Kingdom would be guarded by a powerful blood warrior, he did not expect that there would be a desolate level 2 blood warrior guarding it. At such a young age, he has already reached desolate level 2. Behind the vines, a man in yellow battle suit appeared. He looked at Gray with doubt in his eyes. However, his doubts soon disappeared as he thought of the reason. You must be the one with bloodline affinity from the Purple Moon Kingdom, right? You have multiple bloodlines and can fight above your level. What? How enviable. Whoosh! Under his control, the vines that had been whipping Gray's body changed direction and once again swung towards Gray. Puff! Gray swung the black greatsword in his hand and cut the huge vines in half. Black mist followed the vines and spread to the roots of the vines. The vines were being crushed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Your ability is the same as what was recorded in the intelligence. You can crush anything you touch. It really is you. Seeing the vines being crushed at a fast speed, the man in yellow battle suit was even more certain of his judgment. If I kill you, the Purple Moon Kingdom will definitely feel the pain, right? With a cold smile on his face, he reached out his hand and grabbed at Gray. Then, more than 10 vines rose from the ground around Gray. Each of them was half a meter thick and covered in scales. They were like giant pythons attacking Gray from all directions. Whoosh! Gray did not dare to be careless. The long river of black mist rolled and shrouded him, turning into a round cover to protect him. Whoosh! Whoosh! When the huge plant vines hit the round cover, they immediately made a sizzling sound and were quickly shattered. However, the round cover formed by the black fog was also quickly thinning. Puff! A huge vine pierced through the black mist round cover and hit Gray, who was in the black mist round cover. Gray blocked with his sword, but his hands were numb from the impact, and he was forced to retreat. The power of the 3 mixed abilities had barely reached the 2nd level of the Desolate level. Facing the 1st level of the Desolate level Blood Warrior, it was naturally easy for him to kill it. However, when faced with a 2nd level Desolate level Blood Warrior, it seemed to be a little lacking, and its power was lacking by a level. Whoosh! 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 More than 10 huge vines grew out again and attacked Gray. Not far away, the level 2 Desolate level Elder of the Purple Moon Kingdom attacked. More than 10 purple flames attacked the vines like giant arrows. He could see that with Gray's current strength, he could not deal with a level 2 Desolate level Elder, so he was ready to join forces with Gray. They were here to kill, so there was no need to bully him with numbers. Whoosh! 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 At this moment, something unexpected happened. More than 10 blue lightning bolts bloomed in the sky and met the flame arrows. Boom! 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 The 2 sides collided, and then both sides were annihilated. Like fireworks, a violent hurricane swept up, blowing the buildings in the stronghold Askew. To be able to block the attack of a level 2 Desolate level Blood Warrior, one could imagine the strength of the attacker. There was actually a 2nd level 2 Desolate level Blood Warrior in the Flame Kingdom's spy station. Chapter 448. Why don't I be your opponent? A man appeared and looked at the level 2 Desolate level old man from the Purple Moon Kingdom with a mocking look. He was a dark-skinned man with a beard on his chin. His appearance was extremely ordinary. If he was placed in a crowd, he would be extremely inconspicuous. However, it was this kind of person that left a deep impression on Gray and the others that was unforgettable. Brady Randolph, some of them gritted their teeth and glared at him as if they were going to eat him alive. It's this bastard who killed Moira. Some of the young men's eyes were bloodshot due to anger. Even Gray could not help but have a cold, murderous look in his eyes. This man was none other than the culprit behind the assassination of the 3 kingdoms by the Flame Kingdom. He was a spy in the Jewel Kingdom's royal family for more than 40 years. It's you, Brady Randolph. The level 2 Desolate level old man from the Purple Moon Kingdom was filled with murderous aura. His eyes were like 2 sharp knives as he glared at Brady. What a scary look. Do you want to kill me so badly? Unfortunately, I'll live on. Brady Randolph shrugged and smiled coldly at the furious gazes from the crowd. On the other hand, you guys escaped the previous time, but you're going to die here this time. Seeing Brady Randolph appear, the man with the plant ability was not in a hurry to attack Gray. He looked at Brady Randolph and said, "You're right. You're right. This place has indeed been targeted. It's just a level 2 Desolate level Blood Warrior. The 2 of us can handle him. After killing him, we can escape easily." Brady Randolph looked relaxed as he glanced at Gray and the rest. His eyes finally landed on Gray as he spoke in a mocking tone. "I didn't expect to catch such a big fish." From his point of view, The threat that Gray posed was even greater than the few direct descendants of the three kingdoms' royal families. The few direct descendants of the royal family could only become king-class warriors in the future. But Gray was different. His talent was not bad. Not only did he have the potential to become a king-class warrior, but his combat ability was also far superior to those of the same level. A level 2 barbarian level could easily kill a level 1 desolated level berserker and even survive a level 2 desolated level attack. If he was allowed to continue growing and become a king-class warrior, his battle prowess could be comparable to a second-grade or even third-grade king-class warrior. At that time, the threat he would pose to the Flame Kingdom would be greater than 10 king-class warriors combined. Is there really such a big threat? Let's not talk about whether or not he can become a king warrior. Even if he does become a king warrior, I'm afraid that his affinity will reach its limit. In all of history, I've never heard of anyone being able to fight above their level at the king level. The man in yellow armor didn't think much of it. We have to be careful, Brady Randolph said solemnly. But now, as long as we kill him here today, it won't matter whether he can fight against people of a higher level after reaching the king level. You're right. The man in yellow armor nodded. He looked at Gray as if he was looking at his prey. The next moment, whoosh, the level 2 desolated level berserker's speed burst out. He was like a yellow phantom rushing towards Gray. A long river of black fog that was dozens of meters wide appeared. It surged violently and crashed toward the other party. However, the other party sneered and held a long spear in his hand. He activated the spear's ability and pointed it out in the air. As he pointed his spear, a large number of green wind blades, each several meters long, suddenly appeared and densely pounced on the long river of black fog. The black fog river shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, it disappeared completely. Many wind blades broke through the blockade and attacked Gray, who was behind the black fog river. Crack! Crack! Gray held the huge black sword in his hand. He waved his sword in a slightly awkward manner, shattering the wind blades that were attacking him. A wind blade brushed past his arm, and the armor on his body immediately cracked, leaving a scratch on his arm. Genius or mediocre, you're going to die today. The man in yellow armor sneered. He held his long spear and quickly approached Gray. Whoosh! At this moment, a blue figure appeared beside the man in yellow battle armor in the blink of an eye. A spear swiftly pierced towards the man in yellow battle armor's throat. Whoosh! Facing the sudden attack, the man in yellow armor was shocked. He moved his body slightly to the side to avoid the attack. The spear brushed past his shoulder and left a scratch on his armor. Almost getting hurt, the man in yellow armor was furious. He swept his spear at the blue figure, but the blue figure had already pulled away and dodged the attack. This person was Sophia. Among all the people present, other than the level 2 desolated level berserker from the Purple Moon Kingdom, she was the only one who had such speed. So fast, the man in yellow armor looked at Sophia with a hint of surprise in his eyes. If my attack was not so weak, I might have been hurt by you. On the other side, Brady Randolph was already fighting with a level 2 desolated level berserker from the Purple Moon Kingdom. Be careful. This girl has a special ability. Although she doesn't have any attack skills, she's extremely fast. Is it just very fast? The man in yellow armor's eyes turned cold. Suddenly, a large number of vines broke out of the ground. They were as thick as stone pillars and had sharp tips. They attacked Sophia. Poof, 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 poof. The vines pierced through the ground. Sophia dodged them again and again with her speed. Oomph. The corners of Gray's mouth curled up slightly when he saw the man in the yellow battle suit attacking Sophia with all his strength and leaving him hanging on the side. A trace of coldness flashed through his eyes as he slashed his sword at the man in the yellow battle suit. Chi! Chi! A huge black fog river that was dozens of meters wide surged forward. Large amounts of plants and vines disappeared, and the black fog river crashed into the man in yellow battle armor. Bang! The man in the yellow battle robes retreated. His battle robes were in tatters, and many parts of his flesh had disappeared. It was as if a sharp dagger had sliced through his body again and again. D. Drops of blood dripped onto the ground, leaving a pool of dazzling red. Unlike Sophia, Gray's attacks were enough to threaten the man in yellow. As long as he was hit, he would definitely be injured. All of you deserve to die. The yellow-armored man's face was ashen. As a level 2 Desolation level Blood Warrior, he was actually injured by 2 juniors who had not even reached the Desolation level. This made him feel extremely humiliated. A strong, murderous aura shot out from his body. It was like a thick, dark cloud, pressing down on Gray and Sophia. This was the embryonic form of coercion. When a Blood Warrior became a King Warrior, this murderous aura would transform into coercion. Just the release of this invisible coercion was enough to crush an ordinary person and make a Blood Warrior unable to stand up. After all, he had reached level 2 Desolation level and was in the process of transforming. Although his coercion was not as strong as that of a King Warrior, it already had some deterrent effect. Logically speaking, this murderous aura was enough to affect the savage Blood Warriors and slow their movements. However, it was a pity that this murderous aura was useless against Gray and Sophia. On the battlefield, the two of them had encountered countless murderous auras from level 2 Desolation level experts. They had long been immune to this level of murderous aura. Whoosh! Sophia's figure flashed and turned into a blue phantom. She quickly approached the man in the yellow battle suit and stabbed her long spear at his throat. Gray, on the other hand, was holding a black greatsword. Although his speed was not as fast as Sophia's, he carried a heavy feeling like an armored vehicle as he rushed toward the man in the yellow battle suit. Whoosh! 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 Facing Sophia, who was rushing toward him, the man in the yellow battle suit snorted coldly. A large number of plant vines rushed out, covering the sky and turning the sky green. They quickly attacked Sophia. Sophia could only dodge one after another, avoiding the sharp plant vines. The ground was riddled with holes, and the houses were swept down by the vines. For a moment, even with Sophia's speed, it was difficult for her to get close to the man in the yellow battle suit. However, the man in the yellow battle suit focused on Sophia, giving Gray a chance. Puff! A long river of black mist gushed out and attacked the man in the yellow battle armor with unstoppable momentum. Whoosh! 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 The man in the yellow battle suit was indeed a level 2 Desolation level Blood Warrior. He used his plant ability to attack Sophia, making it difficult for Sophia to get close. At the same time, he infused his long spear with blood power. The spear was covered in a green color. A large number of wind blades burst out, tearing the long river of black mist apart and attacking Gray. Kacha! 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 Gray brandished the black greatsword in his hand, shattering the oncoming wind blades. Suddenly, in his eyes, a long spear with wind blades on the tip of the spear was stabbing toward him. While Gray was blocking the wind blades, the man in the yellow battle suit had closed in on Gray. Clang! Gray blocked the incoming long spear with his sword. However, because his combat strength was not as strong as the man, he was forced to retreat. The man in the yellow battle suit sneered. He took a few steps forward and caught up with Gray. The long spear with wind blades stabbed toward Gray's heart. There's still a gap. Gray sighed inwardly as he watched the cyan's spearhead grow larger and larger in his line of sight. He could feel the sharp and painful aura of the spearhead scraping against his face. There was still a big gap between him and a level 2 Desolation level Blood Warrior. Even with Sophia's help, it was still difficult for him to be the opponent's opponent. Whoosh! A pattern on the purple ring was activated. The next moment, a man in ordinary clothes appeared in front of him. His eyes looked rather lifeless, and there was a sword hanging from his waist. Clang! The sword at his waist was unsheathed. He slashed with the sword and collided with the tip of the green spear. Puff! With a sharp sound, the wind blades on the tip of the green spear were all shattered. The spear hit the man in the yellow battle suit. The man in the yellow battle suit spat out blood and flew backward. Chapter 449. Lord Stanley. He fell heavily to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. Using his spear as a support, the man in yellow struggled to stand up. He looked at the man standing in front of Gray in shock. The man looked like he was in his 40s or 50s, but he also looked like he was in his 80s or 90s. It was difficult to tell his age from his appearance. The man was thin, but his limbs were long and strong. He exuded a faint aura that made him look extremely dangerous. However, his eyes were dull and lifeless. They were completely stupefied and lacked a kind of intelligence. How can this be? Lord Stanley. Isn't he dead? How can he be here? On the other side, Brady Randolph was also shocked. His eyes were wide open as he stared at the man in front of Gray. Shocking, too shocking. The man who was supposed to be dead had appeared in front of them. Judging from the man's attack, he was standing opposite of them. This unforeseen event shocked him too much, and he almost didn't dare to believe his eyes. How can this be? Isn't he dead? He's definitely dead. I saw it with my own eyes. But how can he be here? He was not the only one. Even the people from the Purple Moon Kingdom, who came to besiege the outpost of the Flame Kingdom, were shocked. Many of them had seen the two king-level experts from the Jewel Kingdom besieging the king-level expert from the Flame Kingdom. They had also seen the Flame Kingdom's king-level expert being killed with their own eyes. Now that the king-level expert had appeared again, many of them could not help but feel a chill down their spines as if they had seen a ghost. This man can't be revived. Gray must have used his corpse control ability on him. His corpse control ability can even control the corpse of a king-level expert. Only Sophia and the level 2 Desolation level elder from the Purple Moon Kingdom could guess the reason. They knew that Gray had the bloodline of the corpse-haired ape and could control corpses. Impossible, Lord Stanley can't be alive. Being stared at by the sword-wielding man, the man in yellow armor felt his scalp go numb, cold sweat trickling down his forehead. However, he was a level 2 Desolation level blood warrior after all. His mental fortitude was extremely strong. He forced himself to calm down and observe the man with the sword. His eyes are glazed over, and he actually made a move against me. It's as if he's being controlled. Soon, he discovered something strange and noticed the abnormality. The ability to control corpses. Yes, it's the ability to control corpses. A thought flashed through his mind, and he suddenly remembered a piece of information about Gray that he had received before. According to the information, Gray Fergus had a magical weapon with the ability to control corpses. Now, seeing the appearance of the man with the sword, he finally remembered. You dare to desecrate Lord Stanley's corpse. After understanding this, his eyes spat fire, and he became extremely angry. The corpse of a king-level master, who enjoyed the highest level of treatment wherever he went, had actually been controlled by someone else and turned into a tool for battle. This was an absolute humiliation. He's someone that the Flame Kingdom needs to respect, not someone that I need to respect. Gray sneered. He did not have any psychological burden when it came to controlling the opponent's corpse to battle. He was not a pedantic person. Stanley Grinton was his enemy when he was alive. He had once chased after them and almost caused them to fall into a desperate situation. He did not think that it was too much to do this to an enemy. I'm going to kill you. The man in yellow armor's eyes were filled with killing intent as he rushed towards Gray angrily. Green wind blades were attached to the spear in his hand, emitting an extremely sharp aura. Scratches appeared on the surrounding ground. Gray did not move, but Stanley Grinton, who was in front of him, moved. In an instant, he rushed out like a phantom and was already close to the man in yellow armor. The sword in his hand was like a phantom that slashed across. Poof! The man in yellow armor was suddenly sent flying. A deep wound appeared on his chest, and one could vaguely see his bones with blood. A large amount of blood seeped out of his wound, like an unstoppable tap. Although he had lost his blood beast ability and was only left with his physical strength, he was still a king stage expert when he was alive. Even if he was only left with his physical strength, it was still comparable to a level 3 Desolation level. The man in yellow armor's level 2 Desolation level strength was not enough at this moment. With his spear on the ground, the man in yellow armor covered the wound on his chest and looked at Gray angrily. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. More than 10 huge vines that were half a meter thick rose from the ground, whistling. The strong wind caused the sand and stones on the ground to fly as they smashed towards Gray. Poof, poof, poof. Stanley Grinton swung his sword quickly, and the huge vines that were attacking Gray were cut apart like tofu. The vines fell heavily to the ground, and several houses in the stockade were directly smashed down. After cutting off all the attacking vines, Stanley Grinton flashed. With his terrifying speed, he once again approached the man in yellow armor and stabbed his sword towards the man's heart. Ah! The man in yellow armor roared. His eyes flashed with ruthlessness, and the blood skill that he had long prepared suddenly exploded. Suddenly, a large number of plant thorns emerged from his body. Each of them was several meters long and stronger than metal. Poof! Stanley Grinton, who bore the brunt of the attack, was immediately pierced by more than 10 thorns. His clothes were pierced, and his body that was approaching the man in yellow armor suddenly stopped. However, he was still a king stage expert when he was alive. Even if he was not a king stage expert who specialized in defense, his physical defense was still extremely strong compared to a desolation level expert. In addition, he had been metallized by Gray's metallization ability. His physical body was far stronger than when he was alive. The sharp thorns pierced his body as if they were piercing an immortal metal. Not a single wound was left on his body. Crack! He waved the sword in his hand, and the thorns that pierced his body were suddenly cut off. Then, he waved the sword continuously, cutting off all the thorns on the man in yellow armor. He then slashed the man in yellow armor's throat. Because he had used his blood skill, the man in yellow armor who was already injured tried hard to dodge, but it was too late. Poof! The sword slashed through his throat, causing blood to spurt out. He fell down with unwillingness in his eyes. Boom! On the other side, although Brady Randolph was fighting with the level 2 desolation level old man from the Purple Moon Kingdom, his eyes were fixed on Gray and the man in yellow armor. When he saw that the man in yellow armor was easily killed, his pupils suddenly shrank, and his heart was filled with shock. A huge blue lightning bolt appeared and turned into a giant tree with bare leaves that was dozens of meters long. It attacked the level 2 desolation level old man from the Purple Moon Kingdom, while Brady himself turned around and fled. However, in the next moment, he forcefully stopped running forward. His face was filled with shock, and there was even cold sweat on his forehead. In front of him, a tall and thin figure with a long sword suddenly appeared and blocked his way. The figure's emotionless eyes locked onto him like a wild beast. "Didn't you want to kill me? Why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Gray walked over and looked at Brady Randolph with a mocking gaze. "The Flame Kingdom won't let you go for desecrating Sir Stanley's body." Brady Randolph didn't beg for mercy, as he knew that Gray would never let him go. He stared at Gray coldly. "If I don't use my ability to control his body, will the Flame Kingdom let me go?" Gray sneered in disdain. Putting aside the fact that he had killed Curtis Flame, a member of the Flame Kingdom's royal family, the Flame Kingdom wouldn't let him go given the potential he had shown. In that case, he might as well use the Flame Kingdom's body to fight against the Flame Kingdom. No! Brady Randolph's eyes were filled with fervor. "Not only will you die, but the 3 kingdoms will be destroyed as well. You overestimate the Flame Kingdom. Although the Flame Kingdom is powerful, it's impossible for them to destroy the 3 kingdoms." Hearing Brady Randolph's arrogant words, the level 2 desolate level elder from the Purple Moon Kingdom said in disdain, "Humph! The power of the Flame Kingdom is not something you can imagine. Just you wait. You will all die in the near future." As soon as Brady Randolph finished his words, a large amount of lightning suddenly bloomed around him and turned into a sea of lightning. With a destructive power that exceeded the level 2 desolate level, the lightning violently attacked Stanley Grinton and the level 2 desolate level elder from the Purple Moon Kingdom. Brady Randolph grunted and quickly ran in a direction where no one was around. Crackle. Facing the incoming lightning, the level 2 desolate level elder from the Purple Moon Kingdom stepped back and defended himself seriously. Under the control of Gray, Stanley Grinton didn't dodge at all. Instead, he ran straight into the lightning. Boom! The terrifying lightning struck him and wreaked havoc on his body, but it didn't leave a single wound on him. He was covered in a silvery white color and quickly chased after Brady Randolph, who was escaping. Puff! He caught up with Brady Randolph and stabbed his long sword into his back. It pierced through his heart and came out from his chest. Patter! Brady Randolph ran forward a few steps before finally collapsing. His blood dyed the ground under him red. Nice kill. Dead. This poisonous snake is dead. Looking at the dead body of their opponent, the people from the Purple Moon Kingdom felt a sense of relief. Some of the girls whose friends had been assassinated by the Flame Teeth even had tears in their eyes. Many people looked at Gray in shock. They hadn't expected Gray to have such a powerful technique. He was able to manipulate the corpses of kings to fight, and he was able to turn the king's combat power into his own. In the eyes of the man in the yellow battlesuit from the Flame Kingdom, Gray's ability to control a corpse was disrespectful to a king-level expert. However, they didn't think so. Respect a king-level expert who had almost killed them? Seeing that Gray was able to control the corpse of a king-level expert and use it in battle, they felt like they had vented their anger. A few days later, Gray and the others returned to the Jewel Kingdom's Imperial City. The remaining members of the Flame Teeth who knew about their whereabouts had all been killed. The hunt for the Flame Teeth had come to an end, but the impact of this incident didn't end there. The Jewel Kingdom, the Purple Moon Kingdom, and the Scarlet Kingdom were all furious when they heard the news. They gave out orders for revenge one after another. There was even news that the three kingdoms were preparing to form a team of king-level experts to demand an explanation from the Flame Kingdom. Perhaps a battle that would shake the entire continent would happen soon. It wasn't hard to imagine how furious the three kingdoms were. The assassination this time had crossed the bottom line of the three kingdoms. The Jewel Kingdom, the Purple Moon Kingdom, and the Scarlet Kingdom were completely enraged. The three kingdoms had formed a loose alliance under the pressure of the Flame Kingdom. Chapter 450. In a courtyard of the Jewel Kingdom's palace, Gray and a group of young people were sitting. Some of them had just returned from hunting down the remaining members of the Blaze Fong, and there were still traces of murderous aura lingering on their bodies. Some of them had been recuperating in the palace due to their severe injuries. Brady Randolph is dead? Really? That's great. That bastard is finally dead. He got off too easy. If it were up to me, I'd cut him into pieces and let him suffer for 7 days and 7 nights before killing him. After learning that Brady Randolph had been killed, many of them looked excited and joyful. They hated the culprit who had caused the death of their companions. Now that they knew that Brady was dead, they could not help but feel excited and delighted. Who killed him? Someone asked curiously. It's Master Jerome, Sophia said. Jerome Violet was the leader of Gray's team who was in level 2 Desolation level. It's Master Jerome. Although Brady Randolph was a bastard, he was in level 2 Desolation level. Since Master Jerome could kill him, he must be close to level 3 Desolation level. After knowing that Jerome Violet had killed Brady Randolph, some of the young people were in awe. However, they did not notice that some of them, such as Zaloyang and Jessia, were looking at Gray. Only they knew that it was not Jerome Violet who had killed Brady Randolph, but Gray. They had said that it was Jerome Violet for Gray's safety. Those who were present at the scene had been ordered to keep their mouths shut by the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. Even now, they could not help but feel that it was unreal. On the battlefield a few months ago, Gray's battle with the Desolation Blood Warriors had not been easy. He had been injured in almost every battle with Curtis Flame. It was not until the last battle that he had the strength to kill the Desolation Blood Warriors. Even so, he had paid a heavy price. But now, he could easily kill a level 2 Desolation Blood Warrior. His growth rate could only be described as terrifying. Your Highness Francis, I heard that the Purple Moon Kingdom, the Gem Kingdom, and the Scarlet Kingdom are forming a king-level team to attack the Flame Kingdom. Is that true? Zaloyang looked at Francis and asked. It's true. This time, the Flame Kingdom must give us an explanation. Francis nodded affirmatively, and his voice was resolute and decisive. He had a head of purple hair and a handsome face. After this incident, he seemed to have matured a lot, and the aura of a superior on his body gradually became stronger. He participated in the discussions with the higher-ups of the Gem Kingdom and the Scarlet Kingdom. That's great. This time, we'll definitely teach the Raging Flames Kingdom a lesson. A nobleman's face was filled with hatred. One of his childhood playmates had died in this assassination attempt. Although the Raging Flame Kingdom is powerful, I don't believe that it can withstand the combined might of our three kingdoms. A heavily injured noble clenched his teeth. He had almost died in this assassination attempt. Gray remained silent. He did not express his opinion. Logically speaking, no matter how powerful the Fire Kingdom was, it would be impossible for them to resist the combined might of the three kingdoms. However, he had a vague feeling that there would be a change in the situation. Since the Flame Kingdom dared to attack the younger generation of the three kingdoms, they must be prepared for the three kingdoms' revenge. They probably had a trump card that could resist the three kingdoms. Also, Brady Randolph's words before he died gave him a bad feeling. Brady's confidence in the Flame Kingdom was not blind. Brady must know something. Unfortunately, even if he interrogated him, Brady would not say anything. He did not have the ability to read his memories. 2 days later, people from the Purple Moon Kingdom arrived. 4 king-level masters came from the Purple Moon Kingdom to the Jewel Kingdom. 3 of them were from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, while the other was from the Kenneth family, including the king-level master from the royal family, Fitch Violet, who had been here since the beginning. The Purple Moon Kingdom would send out 5 king-level masters to attack the Flame Kingdom. Although it was not all the king-level masters from the Purple Moon Kingdom, it was more than half of them. It was easy to imagine how much importance the Purple Moon Kingdom placed on this assassination. Of course, there were probably other considerations as well. The assassination attempt by the Flaming Fong was probably just the fuse. However, it was definitely not the entire reason behind it. Although the death of a few genius disciples who had yet to mature had indeed caused the Purple Moon Kingdom to be furious, they did not have the qualifications to cause such a huge commotion. As for what kind of considerations they had, it was likely that only those in power would know. In a magnificent hall, Gray and the other young nobles met the 4 king-level masters. Among the 4, there was a female king-level master named Milani Violet. She was an elder of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. She looked like a middle-aged woman, and her real age should be more than that. Similar to the Jewel Kingdom's female king-level master, Greta Austin, she should be a person who paid great attention to maintaining her appearance. Indeed, it was natural for women to love beauty. Other than her, there were 3 other people. One of them was called Chapman Violet. He belonged to the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. He was a man with a slightly thin appearance and strong muscles all over his body. Another one was called Baird Kenneth. He was an elder with a sense of vicissitudes in his eyes. He came from the Kenneth family, a Duke family. He was the only remaining king-level master among the 3 Duke families in the Purple Moon Kingdom. It was also because of his existence that the Kenneth family was able to suppress the other 2 Duke families and become the strongest among the 3 Duke families. It was not difficult to see the importance of a king-level master to a family. Among the 3, the last one was an elder named Dyphony Violet. The elder's figure was slightly stooped, and his face looked extremely old. The wrinkles on his face were like the wrinkles on an old tree. He looked quite old. Lord Dyphony. Could it be him? Beside Gray, Zeroying looked at the elder with a trace of doubt in his eyes. He seemed to have thought of something, but was not sure. What's wrong? Gray looked at Zeroying, puzzled. According to the records, the first patriarch of the Sidney family seemed to have met Lord Dyphony. Judging from the time, Lord Dyphony is very likely to be more than 400 years old. Zeroying took a deep breath and said, "More than 400 years old? Are you sure?" Gray suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air, a trace of shock in his eyes. A king-level warrior's average lifespan was about 300 years without injury or illness. However, this did not mean that there were no king-level warriors whose lifespan exceeded this number. The Purple Thunder King, the owner of the King's Tomb that Gray had previously investigated, was a king-level master who had lived for more than 400 years. There were two ways for a king-level warrior to increase their lifespan. One was to consume precious magic plants that could extend their lifespan. The other was to increase their own level. At the king level, every time a king-level warrior completed a cycle of blood cultivation, their body would undergo a metamorphosis and their lifespan would increase accordingly. If this Diphony Violet had consumed precious magic plants that could extend his lifespan, it would be fine. However, if he had relied on his own level to live to such an old age, then his strength would be extremely terrifying. It was very likely that he was a peak existence who had undergone 3 metamorphoses. After undergoing 3 metamorphoses, he was only 1 level away from the magic light level, which was above the king level. There is no doubt that he was the strongest king level. If king level warriors were said to be the strongest group of people on this continent, then a king level existence who had undergone 3 metamorphoses would be one of the strongest people on this continent. Guessing that the other party was such an existence, Gray and Zeroying could not hide their shock. Whoosh! Suddenly, a pair of old but wise eyes fell on Gray and Zeroying. Diphony Violet was looking at the two of them. As a king-level master, his senses were extremely sharp. Gray and Zeroying's gazes lingered on each other for a few seconds, and they were immediately detected by the other party. Both of them felt a chill in their hearts and respectfully bowed to the other party. Beside the old man, Sophia was wearing a long purple dress. Her skin was as white as snow, and her figure was slender and graceful. When she saw the old man looking at Gray and Zeroying, she smiled slightly and whispered a few words to the old man. Hearing Sophia's words, the old man's gaze had a strange look. He paused on Gray for a moment and then nodded. A day later, king-level masters from the Scarlet Kingdom arrived. The situation was similar to that of the Purple Moon Kingdom. They also had 4 king-level masters, and their leader was also suspected to have undergone 3 metamorphoses. In the end, including the 6 king-level masters from the Jewel Kingdom, a total of 16 king-level masters set off for the Flame Kingdom. Gray and the other youth from the 3 kingdoms were also arranged to accompany them. Clearly, this was an opportunity for the younger generation to broaden their horizons. A few days later, the teams from the 3 kingdoms arrived at the border of the Jewel Kingdom near the Flame Kingdom's border. This was a hilly terrain. The hills varied in height from a few hundred meters. They were verdant, and there were many shrubs growing on them. In some places, the sides of the hills were extremely steep. There were obvious signs of excavation. These were signs of gemstone mining. The group climbed up a hill. In the distance, on a hill a few miles away, a group of people appeared. There were old men and young men. Among them, Gray even saw a few familiar faces. Among these familiar faces, there was a golden-haired young man. The young man was tall and handsome, like a crane in a flock of chickens. He was the second prince of the Flame Kingdom, Niklos Blaze. Gray looked at the group of elders. There were more than 10 of them, and each of them had a deep aura. Their bodies emitted a dangerous aura. When his gaze landed on one of them, he couldn't help but pause. He didn't move his gaze away for a long time. A name appeared in his heart. King of Assassins. Chapter 451. It was a man dressed in black. He wore a black knight suit with a black cloak on the outside. He also had a pair of black metal claws on his hands. His entire body was black, as if he would disappear into the shadows at any time. This was the king of assassins that Gray had seen once in Mercenary City. He was also the culprit who had almost destroyed the Marquis family in Sydney. Gray looked at Zero worriedly. He saw that Zero was breathing heavily, and his eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the king of assassins. He sighed. He didn't know what to say. At a time like this, any consolation would be useless. People who hadn't experienced that kind of pain couldn't truly understand how Zero felt. You've crossed the line. Among the group of people with powerful auras, there was an elder. He was tall and strong. Although he was not young, his back was extremely straight, and he exuded a strong sense of majesty. The group of people seemed to regard him as their leader. He looked at the 3 king-level cultivators and said, "Let's go." Humph, pretentious. Blair, we haven't seen each other for so many years. and you still like to put on airs. Don't you know why we're here in the Flame Kingdom? One of the 3 king-level fighters spoke. It was a tall and thin elder. He had a disdainful look on his face as he scolded coldly. He came from the Scarlet Kingdom, and his name was Lennon Scarlet. He was the Scarlet Kingdom's existence that was suspected to have reached the 3rd metamorphosis. The Flame Kingdom has already lost a king-level fighter. What else do you want? Blair Blaze spoke. Hand over all the people who participated in this. An old woman with white hair spoke. She came from the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom, and her name was Jennifer Austin. She was the leader of the 6 king-level fighters from the Jewel Kingdom. Impossible. Blair Blaze decisively refused. This time, not only were there many king-level fighters from the Flame Kingdom participating in the assassination of the younger generation of the 3 kingdoms, but there were also 4 king-level fighters. One of them was already dead, and the Flame Kingdom couldn't hand over the other 3. It's not up to you. The Purple Moon Kingdom's king-class expert, Diphony Violet, snorted coldly. His face was old, but his voice was full of vigor and dominance. It seems that you are determined to fight with the Kingdom of Raging Flames. Blair Blaze's voice turned cold. You won't let it go just like that? Dream on. Everyone who participates will die. Among the Jewel Kingdom's king-level powerhouses, a burly man opened his eyes wide and snorted coldly. With a single step, he was already dozens of meters away from the Jewel Kingdom. In just a few moments, he was only a kilometer away from the Jewel Kingdom. He held a huge yellow battle axe in his hand and attacked furiously. Yellow light bloomed on the battle axe as it flew in the direction of the Jewel Kingdom. Whoosh! A huge yellow light crashed down like a huge yellow waterfall that was hundreds of meters long, crashing towards the Jewel Kingdom's group. One of the prodigies of his family, the tall young man who once fought against Hylia Violet and had the strength of a wild blood warrior, had died in the ambush of the Blaze Kingdom. This was a disciple who had the potential to become a king-class warrior. Originally, he was looking forward to having 2 king-class powerhouses in his family and seeing his family become extremely prosperous. But now he had died just like that. One could imagine the anger in his heart. If you want to fight, then let's fight. The Flame Kingdom is not afraid of you. From the Flame Kingdom, a man in black and red battle armor stepped out. He held an orange long sword in his hand. Orange flames rushed into the sky like a rainbow and collided with the yellow waterfall. Boom! A terrifying shockwave swept out in all directions. Gales raged within a radius of 1 kilometer. Many trees were blown down by the gales. Even Gray and the others, who were several kilometers away, could not help but feel the gales brushing against their faces. The 2 quickly approached each other and quickly exchanged blows in the sky. Rumble, 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 bang. After dozens of blows, the burly man from the Jewel Kingdom chopped down with his axe on the man in black and red battle armor. The man in black and red battle armor was stained with blood. He flew backward like a cannonball and landed heavily on the ground, creating a crater that was dozens of meters in diameter. Go to hell. The burly man from the Jewel Kingdom was overflowing with murderous intent. He chopped down with his axe, and a yellow light like a yellow waterfall hit the man in black and red battle armor lying on the ground. Boom! From the Flame Kingdom, a woman in blue battle armor attacked. A real waterfall appeared and collided with the yellow light, blocking it. Then, the man in black and red battle armor stood up again and joined forces with her. Immediately, the burly man from the Jewel Kingdom was injured and flew backward. Trying to compete with numbers? Several king-level experts from the Purple Moon, Jewel, and Scarlet Kingdoms rushed out and attacked the 2 from the Flame Kingdom. Seeing this, more than 10 king-level experts from the Flame Kingdom also rushed out. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky, more than 20 king-level experts were fighting. The dazzling power of the blood fiends dyed the sky in a variety of colors. Within a few kilometers, it was like the end of the world. There were craters that were the size of small mountains caused by meteorites. There were raging flames that could not be extinguished. The ground was covered in ice and snow. There were also scorched marks of lightning strikes. Even standing a few kilometers away, Gray and the others could not help but be affected. A huge fireball smashed toward them like a burning meteorite. The air was torn apart, and scorching heat waves swept across. Before it even got close, the terrifying heat had already hit them. Gray and the others of the younger generation felt as if they were in a sauna. They could not help but sweat and subconsciously retreat. A king-level expert from the Scarlet Kingdom, who was suspected to have undergone 3 metamorphoses, attacked. A crimson thunderbolt crackled and instantly extinguished the huge fireball. Then, he ordered the younger generation of the 3 kingdoms. Everyone stepped back. Gray and the others did not dare to hesitate. They retreated several kilometers before stopping. They climbed up a hill and looked at the battle in the distance. In the distance, where the explosions were the most concentrated, several hills had collapsed and been razed to the ground. In some places, the ground was deeply sunken and even underground water was seeping out. What terrifying power! Jessica was a little flabbergasted. Although there was also a battle between king-level experts on the night of the Flame Tooth attack, both sides had deliberately stayed away from the castle. Moreover, she was also under attack by the Flame Tooth and was busy running for her life. She did not have the energy to pay attention to that battle. This was the first time she had witnessed a battle between king-level experts. No wonder king-level experts don't appear on the battlefield. A look of realization appeared on her face. The gap between king-level experts and those below was like a chasm. The gap between the two could not be filled by numbers. If king-level experts appeared on the battlefield, the most likely outcome would be that everyone below the king level on both sides would die in the aftermath of the battle. Great-grandfather is ready to attack. Lars Scarlet stared unblinkingly at the figure of a king-level expert in the distance. It was a tall and thin old man. He was the one who had blocked the aftermath of the king-level expert's battle for them. He was suspected to be a thrice metamorphosed king-level expert. Gray and the others could not help but look at this old man. They had doubts in their hearts. Was this old man a thrice metamorphosed king-level expert? How strong was a thrice metamorphosed king-level expert? Whoosh! A king-level expert from the Flame Kingdom suddenly spat out blood and flew backward. He crashed heavily into the ground, creating a huge crater with a diameter of dozens of meters. And in his original position, the thrice metamorphosed king-level expert from the Scarlet Kingdom appeared. So fast, the younger generation of the 3 kingdoms could not help but exclaim. Their faces were full of shock and astonishment. Fast was too fast. Almost in the blink of an eye, the old man had already appeared in the center of the battlefield. He had severely injured a king-level expert from the Flame Kingdom. During the process, Gray and the others did not even see how the old man moved. It was as if he had teleported. There's no way we can dodge. Gray's pupils shrank. He was sure that if he stood in front of this old man, even if he used teleportation, he would not be able to escape. Although teleportation could allow one to move 1,000 miles away, there was a process when it was activated. It could not be completed in an instant. Although this period of time was extremely short, the old man definitely had enough time to make a move against him. This speed, there's no mistaking it. He has indeed reached thrice metamorphosed. Sophia, who was beside Gray, said with certainty. Born in the royal family, her vision was naturally extraordinary. She had an extremely clear understanding of the several levels of king-level experts. She immediately determined the specific strength level of this king-level expert from the Scarlet Kingdom. Lennon Scarlet. A furious roar rang out from the Flame Kingdom's king-level expert. A golden-haired old man appeared beside the Scarlet Kingdom's thrice metamorphosed king-level expert at a speed not inferior to his. Blazing golden flames burned on his long spear. The spear pierced straight at the thrice metamorphosed king-level expert from the Scarlet Kingdom. Boom! The thrice metamorphosed king-level expert from the Scarlet Kingdom wielded a giant sword entwined with scarlet lightning. He did not retreat in the slightest. Boom! A violent explosion erupted. Even at such a distance, Gray and the others' ears were still buzzing. They were almost deaf. A terrifying shockwave swept out in all directions. The king-level experts closer to the two were actually sent flying by this shockwave. On the ground more than 100 meters away from them, trees were uprooted by this shockwave. Soil and stones were splashed everywhere. A barren area with a diameter of several miles appeared. Primo Blaze, you have indeed reached thrice metamorphosed. Aren't you the same? The thrice metamorphosed king-level expert from the Scarlet Kingdom, Linen Scarlet, and the thrice metamorphosed king-level expert from the Flame Kingdom, Primo Blaze, stared at each other from hundreds of meters away. Just the shockwave alone was enough to send other king-level experts flying. For them, this was only the first time they had tested each other. In the next moment, the two crossed hundreds of meters in an instant and clashed again. The terrifying shockwave once again affected many king-level experts and sent them flying. Chapter 452. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky, crimson lightning and golden flames collided one after another, erupting into deafening sounds. Terrifying shockwaves surged out one after another. Gray and the others retreated another 2 miles before the buzzing in their heads subsided. Only then did they feel better. Linen Scarlet and Primo Flame, who had reached the third metamorphosis, became the center of the battle. The other king-level experts had to stay away from the two of them. Even if they were king-level experts, they would definitely be injured if they were hit by the shockwaves of the battle. This was the combat power of a thrice metamorphosis king-level expert, the top expert among king-level experts. It's our turn. The suspected thrice metamorphosis king-level expert from the Purple Moon Kingdom, Diphony Violet, and the Jewel Kingdom's king-level expert, Jennifer Austin, looked at each other and rushed towards the battlefield. Whoosh! They appeared not far from Linen Scarlet and Primo Flame. The other king-level experts avoided the two of them, but they deliberately approached them. The speed they displayed was not slower than Linen Scarlet and Primo Flame. If there were no surprises, the two of them should also be thrice metamorphosis king-level experts. Whoosh! At this moment, behind the Flame Kingdom, a person also appeared on the battlefield in an instant. This was an old man with a tall and straight posture. He was the leader of the Flame Kingdom's king-level experts, Blair Blaze. To be able to become the leader of the Flame Kingdom's king-level experts, his strength was unquestionable. He must also be a thrice metamorphosis king-level expert. Blair, you actually sent the Blaze Fong to kill the younger generation of our 3 kingdoms. The Flame Kingdom must pay the price for this. Jennifer Austin looked coldly at Blair Blaze and said, Pay the price? Impossible. The 3 of you are not qualified. Even if he was facing 2 king-level experts of the same realm, Blair Blaze was still full of momentum and his words were full of dominance. Blair, you are too arrogant. Diphony Violet snorted. Arrogant? I don't think so. Blair Blaze said coldly. Jennifer and Lennon have both completed their 3rd metamorphosis. Is this the reason why your 3 kingdoms have the confidence to go against my Flame Kingdom? Although Primo Blaze has also become a thrice-transformed king-level warrior, you only have 2 in the Flame Kingdom. I don't believe that you can find a 3rd thrice-transformed king-level warrior in the Flame Kingdom. Jennifer Austin said coldly. Why would we need a 3rd thrice-metamorphosis king-class warrior to deal with you? Blair Blaze said with his hands behind his back. Both of us are thrice-metamorphosed king-class warriors. Could it be that you want to fight against the 2 of us? Diphony Violet said coldly. Over the years, although the 3 kingdoms had formed an alliance, they still couldn't do anything to the Flame Kingdom. On one hand, the 3 kingdoms were wary of each other. They were afraid that their kingdom would lose too much strength and give the other 2 kingdoms an opportunity to take advantage of them. On the other hand, although he and Blair Blaze were thrice-transformed king-level experts, Blair Blaze had walked on this path for a longer time than him and was stronger than him. Now that Jennifer Austin and Linen Scarlet had both become thrice-transformed king-level experts, and the Flame Kingdom had attacked the younger generation of the 3 kingdoms, the 3 kingdoms took this opportunity to test the Flame Kingdom. In the distance, the younger generation of the 3 kingdoms looked at the 3 of them and couldn't help but discuss. Lord Tefuni and Lord Jennifer are thrice-transformed king-level experts. Blair Blaze is definitely not their match. A young man from the Jewel Kingdom said excitedly. How dare they assassinate the younger generation of the three kingdoms? This time, we must make the Flame Kingdom pay the price. A young man from the Purple Moon Kingdom had a face full of hatred. It would be great if we could kill Blaze here. A young man from the Scarlet Kingdom was full of anticipation. Only a few people felt that something was wrong. Blaze was too calm. It's not normal. It feels like Blaze is full of confidence. Gem Queen Glenway Austin's black hair was as black as ink, and her diamond-shaped red gemstone brows were slightly furrowed. Other than Primo Flame having completed Thrice Transformed, what other trump cards does the Flame Kingdom have? The Scarlet Prince, Lars Scarlet, was puzzled. Before Brady Randolph died, he said that the three kingdoms would be destroyed by the Flame Kingdom. From his tone, it didn't seem like he was bluffing. Sophia's delicate face was flawless as she spoke in a low voice. Could the Flame Kingdom have a gold weapon that surpasses silver? Gray's black hair was blown by the wind caused by the battle in the distance. He furrowed his brows and guessed. Silver-level magic weapons weren't the peak of magic weapons. According to what Gray knew, there was a weapon of a higher level than silver-level magic weapons, and that was a gold weapon. According to the records, that was an extremely powerful magic weapon with terrifying power. If it was in the hands of a thrice-transformed king-level expert, it could even allow the king-level expert to break through the bottleneck between king-level and magic light level and possess the power of magic light level. Impossible. There were only a few magic weapons of that level during the Empire's era. If the Flame Kingdom had them, the three kingdoms would have been destroyed long ago. Francis shook his head. Just as Gray and the others were still talking, the battle between Dyphony Violet, Jennifer Austin, and Blaze broke out. Dyphony Violet held a blue spear that was covered with complicated purple patterns. It absorbed Dyphony Violet's Blood Fiend ability and enhanced Dyphony Violet's Blood Fiend ability. With a thrust of the spear, the enhanced purple flames swept out and covered the sky. It was like a purple cloud of fire that attacked Blaze. Jennifer Austin held a white, crystal-like battle axe. The surface of the crystal was covered with mysterious, earthy yellow patterns. The Blood Fiend ability, that was also enhanced by the battle axe, was released. Countless meteorites gathered together and turned into a meteorite group that was hundreds of meters wide, crushing toward Blaze. Brer Raging Flame held a black spear in his hand. The spear was covered with golden lines. Suddenly, with the spear as the center, a dazzling golden light shone out as if a sun was blooming. Rumble, the purple cloud of fire, the meteorite group that was hundreds of meters wide, and the dazzling golden sun collided, releasing purple, earthy yellow, and golden rays of light. In the next moment, a terrifying shockwave rippled and swept out in all directions. More than 10 king-level experts who were fighting were affected. Some of them vomited blood and were sent flying. Several hills were swept by the shockwave and turned into powder on the spot. A lake was swept. The lake water evaporated and dried up on the spot. All the plants were silently crushed. The birds and beasts in the forest had no time to escape and were turned into a bloody pulp. With the explosion as the center, there was not a single trace of green in the radius of a few miles. Under such a violent shockwave, Dyphony Violet, Jennifer Austin, and Blaze went against the shockwave and rushed toward each other. A purple figure, an earthy yellow figure, and a golden figure were rapidly colliding and separating. The ability of the three colors transformed into all kinds of shapes. Sometimes it was a giant beast, sometimes it was a mountain, and sometimes it was a giant claw. They collided from time to time. One terrifying ripple after another was like water in a pond that had been disturbed. In a few breaths of time, the three had already exchanged hundreds of blows. No, something's wrong. Blaze actually blocked the combined attack of Lord Dyphony and Lord Jennifer by himself. What's going on? All three of them are thrice metamorphosis king-level experts. How can Blaze block Lord Dyphony and Lord Jennifer by himself? The younger generation of the three kingdoms were all stunned and doubtful. As for Gray and the few others who had a bad premonition, their expressions changed slightly. Their bad premonition had come true. Although the Flame Kingdom did not have a third thrice metamorphosis king-level expert, Blair Blaze had displayed astonishing combat strength. He actually blocked the attacks of two thrice metamorphosis king-level experts by himself. Could it be that Blair Blaze has already reached the magic light level? Or does he really have a gold weapon in his hands? Thinking of the conjecture that Gray had raised before, some of the young nobles were bewildered. No, if that's really the case, Lord Dyphony and Lord Jennifer would have been defeated long ago. Gem Queen Glenway, Austin frowned. She was certain that Blair Blaze had not reached the magic light level, nor did he have a gold weapon in his hands. Otherwise, Dyphony Violet and Jennifer Austin would have been defeated long ago. Regardless of whether he was at the magic light level or had a gold weapon, his combat strength would definitely reach the magic light level. She did not know much about the magic light level. She had only seen descriptions of it in books from the Empire's era. However, she was certain that a person with magic light level combat strength definitely had the strength to easily wipe out two thrice metamorphosis king-level experts. Could it be that the magic weapon in his hands is not a complete gold weapon, but a damaged one? Lars guessed. Excessive combat or improper preservation could lead to damage to a magic weapon. Such damaged magic weapons would sometimes have their power reduced by a level. Sometimes their power would be reduced by half, but they would still have most of their power. Blair Blaze had displayed combat strength that exceeded that of a thrice metamorphosis king-level warrior, but was not at the magic light level. He could not help but suspect that the magic weapon in his opponent's hands was a damaged gold weapon. If it's really a damaged one, it's very possible. Scarlet Prince Lars' conjecture was reasonable. Many people felt that it was very likely, but Gray and some of the young nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom could not help but look at Francis. The scene before them gave them a sense of déjà vu, sure enough. Francis also had the same feeling, and he said, "Don't worry. That's possible, but there's another possibility, and it seems to me that it's more likely." Chapter 453. How is that possible? All the youngsters looked at Francis. Blair Blaze shouldn't be at the magic light level, but he's not far from the magic light level, Francis said as he stared at the golden figure fighting in the distance. "Your Highness Francis, do you have any basis for saying that?" The Gem Queen, Glenway Austin, looked at Francis and asked, "In fact, I've encountered a similar battle before." Francis said, "You have?" Lars looked at Francis curiously. "Yes." Francis nodded. "It was during the battle with the Flame Kingdom. The Flame Kingdom's second prince, Niklos Blaze, blocked my combined attack with a desolate level blood fiend by himself." At this point, he looked at Gray. "Gray, you fought with Curtis Raging Flame before. You should be able to feel that the blood method he cultivates is stronger than the blood method of our three royal families, right?" "It's indeed stronger, but not by much." Gray thought about it carefully and judged. "The blood techniques of the Inferno Kingdom are slightly stronger than the royal families of the three kingdoms. In addition to Nicholas Inferno's realm at that time, he should have reached the peak of the first stage of the Desolate level. Therefore, even if I joined forces with the Desolate level Blood Beast, we could only fight to a draw. I think Blair Blaze is probably in the same situation now. He should be at the peak of the third metamorphosis now." Francis's face was full of seriousness. Peak of the third metamorphosis king-level warrior. Many people frowned, their hearts heavy. Originally, they thought that Dyphony Violet and Jennifer Austin would win in a 2-on-1 battle with the same level. They didn't expect Blair Blaze to have reached the peak of the third metamorphosis. His combat strength wasn't any weaker than the two of them combined. Not only is there a second third metamorphosis king-level warrior, but there's also a peak third metamorphosis king-level warrior. No wonder he dares to attack the three kingdoms. Gray said solemnly. Their previous worries were confirmed. The Flame Kingdom dared to attack the three kingdoms at the same time because they had something to rely on. The Flame Kingdom alone had two third-tier kings. One of them had even reached the peak of the third metamorphosis. He could fight against two third-tier kings by himself. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the Flame Kingdom was able to stop three kingdoms by itself. Thinking of how powerful the other party was, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Will he break through to magic light? A noble disciple asked worriedly. The magic light tier was a tier above the king tier. Once it appeared, it would be like the descent of magic light, destroying the world. This king of the Flame Kingdom had actually reached the peak of the third tier. He was only one step away from becoming a magic light tier existence. People couldn't help but worry if he would break through in the near future. If the other party made a breakthrough, even if the three kingdoms joined forces, they would not be able to resist the other party. It's hard to say. Sophia Violet furrowed her delicate brows. It was reasonable to say that in the current era, the conditions for producing magic light tier powerhouses had already been lost. Even becoming a third-tier king was extremely difficult. However, the other party had not only reached the third tier of the king tier, he had also reached the peak of this tier. It wasn't impossible for him to go one step further and reach the magic light tier. If that was the case, it would be a disaster for the three kingdoms. If things went wrong, the three kingdoms would be destroyed. Rumble. Another loud sound. Blair Blaze, Jennifer Austin, and Diphony Violet, who were fighting, quickly separated. Blair, you've actually reached the peak of the third metamorphosis? Looking at Blair Blaze, who was hundreds of meters away, Diphony Violet said solemnly. His words confirmed Francis's guess. The reason why Blair Blaze was able to block his and Jennifer Austin's joint forces was because he had walked further than them on the path of the third metamorphosis. He had already touched the bottleneck of the fourth metamorphosis. Diphony, what do you think? What do you think of this surprise? Blair Blaze sneered. Golden flames burst out from his spear. It was like a sun blooming. He took the initiative to attacking Jennifer Austin and Diphony Violet. Rumble. The tricolored light bloomed in the air again. Terrifying shock waves rippled out. With the three of them as the center, the area within a radius of a few miles was razed to the ground. The soil on the ground was turned over again and again. It was full of scorched marks and huge craters. In the end, this battle between king-tier powerhouses that would go down in history ended abruptly. Several king-tier powerhouses on both sides were heavily injured. However, none of them died in battle. This was originally an excuse for the three kingdoms to test the Raging Flame Kingdom with the young generation being attacked. If they discovered that the Flame Kingdom was no match for the three kingdoms, they would naturally pursue and attack fiercely. However, when they discovered that the Flame Kingdom's battle strength was no weaker than the three kingdoms, they naturally stopped pursuing and attacking. On the other hand, the Kingdom of Fire was facing the combined forces of the three kingdoms. Although Blair Blaze was able to fend off the combined forces of Diphony Violet and Jennifer Austin, he didn't have any advantage. Naturally, he didn't plan to continue the battle. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The three king-tier powerhouses retreated to the Jewel Kingdom's territory. The Flame Kingdom's king-tier powerhouses retreated to the Flame Kingdom's territory. The border between the Jewel Kingdom and the Flame Kingdom, close to 10 miles of area, was completely scorched. All the mountains had collapsed. All the plants had disappeared. All the lakes had dried up. The ground was like the surface of the moon. It was completely bare. The surface was full of huge craters with diameters ranging from tens of meters to hundreds of meters. The destructive power was enough to change the landscape to a certain extent. This was the destructive power of a king-tier powerhouse. With the help of Stanley Grinton's corpse, although I already have the battle strength of a third-stage desolation grade, compared to a real king-tier powerhouse, I'm still too far away. Looking at the broken land without any sense of beauty, Gray's heart was filled with shock. King-level experts. Only king-level experts were at the pinnacle of the continent. Everyone else, even if they were at the third level of the desolation grade, was still inferior to them in terms of strength. There was a clear distinction between king-level experts and those below. A sense of urgency rose in his heart. The gap between him and a king-tier powerhouse was too great. He did not need too many. Just one king-tier powerhouse was enough to wipe him out. Among his enemies was the most powerful force on this continent, the Kingdom of Raging Flames. This was a terrifying kingdom that could withstand the combined might of the Purple Moon, Scarlet, and Gem empires. Not only did they have a large number of king-tier powerhouses, but they also had Blaze, who could fight two thrice metamorphosis king-tier powerhouses alone. If there were no accidents, he should be the strongest person on the continent. Unfortunately, he was on the opposite side of such a powerful force. There was no way to resolve the situation. It was not only because he was an enemy of the Flame Kingdom, but also because he had killed a direct descendant of the Flame Kingdom's royal family. With such a powerful enemy, the only thing he could do now was to increase his strength as quickly as possible and increase his ability to protect himself. Suddenly, Gray felt a gaze like two sharp knives stabbing into his body, causing him to feel a faint pain. He looked over and saw that in the direction of the group of people from the Flame Kingdom, a person's gaze had fallen on him. This was an old man, but his body was extremely tall and straight. The king-tier powerhouses around him seemed to regard this old man as their leader. This person was Blaze, who had fought two thrice metamorphosis king-tier powerhouses alone. He was the strongest person on the continent. Next to him was a young man with blonde hair. The young man was slender and handsome. It was Blaze. At this moment, he was saying something to the old man. It seemed that it was because of his words that the old man's gaze fell on Gray. Although he was too far away to hear what Blaze was saying, there was no doubt that it was not a good thing. Gray could not help but be vigilant. Great-grandfather. He is the one who has a bloodline affinity and can fight above his level. Blaze coldly looked at Gray in the distance and said, "He is the one who killed Kotick?" Blaze's eyes were cold as he asked. "Yes, he is the one who killed my brother Kotick." Blaze's eyes were filled with traces of hatred. Facing the enemy who had killed his brother, even someone as calm as him found it difficult to hide his emotions at this time. What a pity for Kotick. With his potential, he had a very high chance of becoming a king-tier warrior in the future. Blaze sighed softly. At his age, he didn't know how many generations his bloodline had been passed down, and he didn't know how many descendants he had. His familial ties were already very thin, and what he valued was the aptitude of the descendants, not the relationship of bloodline. Great-grandfather, this person's cultivation talent is not bad, and he also has a bloodline affinity. I suggest that we kill him in advance. Blaze's eyes flashed coldly as he said solemnly. Although his bloodline affinity might not be useful after he reaches king tier, it is indeed necessary to kill him in advance. Blaze nodded and looked at a man shrouded in black not far away. Theodore, you are now one of the managers of the Blaze Fong. You are also the one who understands the Purple Moon Kingdom the most among the king tier managers. I will leave this matter to you. No problem, please rest assured, the man in black said with a sinister smile. This man was the king of assassins, Theodore. He was chased by the Purple Moon Kingdom and fled to the Flame Kingdom. In order to obtain the protection of the Flame Kingdom, he was forced to join the Flame Kingdom's Blaze Fong and became one of the managers. In fact, he had participated in the attack on Jadeite Castle a few days ago. At that time, he was the king-tier warrior who had fought with Fitch Violet. He naturally hated the Purple Moon Kingdom who had forced him to lose his freedom. Now that the Flame Kingdom was preparing to kill a talented disciple of the Purple Moon Kingdom in the cradle, he was naturally happy to do so. Chapter 454. In the capital of the Purple Moon Kingdom, after a week of traveling, Gray and the rest had returned. The descendants of the various families had dispersed. Gray also bid farewell to Francis and Sophia. You've probably been targeted by the Flame Kingdom. I suggest that you don't leave the capital. I'll arrange a place for you to stay. Looking at Gray, Francis said with a serious expression. Some of the descendants of the nobles did not know that Gray's strength had reached level 3 of the Desolate level because the royal family had blocked the news. However, as a direct descendant of the royal family, he naturally knew. He was only at level 2 of the Barbarian level, but he already had the combat strength of level 3 of the Desolate level. He saw terrifying potential in Gray, which even made him a little jealous. Of course, he would not kill Gray just because of jealousy. Therefore, it was a fact that he valued Gray very much. After the assassination attempt by the Flame Teeth, he could not help but worry that Gray would become the target of the Flame Teeth. Do we have to go back? Sophia was wearing a long blue dress that showed her slender waist. She brushed her long purple hair behind her ear and asked Gray with a slight frown, "I've been away from home for so long. I have to at least go back and tell them that I'm safe." Gray shrugged. He naturally understood that Francis and Sophia were concerned about his safety. However, his situation was special. The fastest way to grow was not to stay in a certain place and cultivate for a long time. Instead, it was to consume the blood of various blood fiends to form stronger blood fiends. If he stayed in the capital, all of his actions would be exposed to the royal family. His affinity physique could not stand up to scrutiny and could easily be exposed. Affinity with 2 types of blood fiends was an affinity physique. Affinity with 5 types of blood fiends was an affinity physique. However, if he had affinity with more than 10 or even 20 types of blood fiends, it would no longer be an affinity physique. Would they think that Gray had mastered some kind of method to implant multiple types of blood fiends? Although Gray's method could not be taught to others, would the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom believe it? Gray would never think of others in a bad light, but he would never think of everything in a good light either. Although he was currently favored by the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom, when the benefits were great enough, it was not impossible for them to fall out with him. For example, when Greta Austin, the king-level powerhouse of the Jewel Kingdom, discovered that he had multiple bloodlines in his body, if it was proven that he had cultivated a hybrid bloodline technique, what would the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom do? The biggest possibility was to force him to hand over the hybrid blood technique. At most, they would give him some material compensation afterwards. As for asking for his opinion, they wouldn't force him if he didn't want to hand it over. In Gray's opinion, such a thing was unlikely. The value of the hybrid blood technique was too great. The method of implanting multiple bloodlines was definitely not any less valuable than the hybrid blood technique. It might even be more valuable. If the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom had the wrong idea that he had such a method, they would definitely force him to hand it over. Polly and Darren had already returned to the Imperial City from the territory, but Gray had no intention of returning to the territory. After bidding farewell to the 3 of them, Gray left the Imperial City. Without taking a carriage, Gray went to a deserted area and directly used the space teleportation. With the amount of blood power he had now, he could use the space teleportation multiple times. When he passed by the forest where he encountered the desolate level blood fiend that could control spirits, Gray hesitated for a moment. In the end, he gave up on hunting down the desolate level blood fiend that could control spirits. Although his strongest combat power now, which was his ability to control corpses, was already at level 3 of the desolate level, both he and the corpses he controlled had a weakness. That was, although his physical body was strong, the essence of his soul was rather weak. In the face of a desolate level blood fiend that could possibly attack the soul, his strong physical body might not be of much use. If he was not careful, he could very well be killed by a wave of soul attack. If that happened, he would really want to cry, but no tears would come out. Although his soul power was good, it was not enough for him to risk his life for it. He could wait until he reached the desolate level and his soul was strong enough to resist soul attacks before hunting it down. After using the space teleportation several times, Gray returned to Fergus Castle. After leaving for more than a month, the Fergus family did not change much. If there was a change, it would be that the castle had become more lively. Because the castle had grown bigger, the Fergus family had hired many more servants. Earl Fergus and Bernal were not at home. It was said that they had gone to visit a Viscount family in a kingdom to discuss business. Because of Gray, the Fergus family had accumulated many noble connections in the kingdom. After the war with the Flame Kingdom, the 2 of them were busy developing business and turning these connections into resources. Gray did not know much about these things and did not want to care about them. After all, he did not even manage his own territory and was just a hands-off boss. After seeing the group of people who were at the peak of the continent and their terrifying strength that could destroy a city, he was even more certain of the path he had chosen. Putting all his energy into improving his strength and using the improvement of his strength to drive other aspects, such as wealth and status, was Grey's path. 3 days later, Earl Fergus and Bernal returned. "Grey, are you hurt?" Earl Fergus and Bernal were both concerned. Because they had many noble connections, they were very well informed. Not long after the news of the attack on the younger generation of the Three Kingdoms reached the Purple Moon Kingdom, they had already heard about it. They had been worried for the past few days until they found out that Grey was not among the people who were attacked and killed. They were completely relieved. "I'm fine." Grey smiled and shook his head, then asked, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" He noticed that Earl Fergus and Bernal, who had just returned, did not look too good. Many of the family's businesses have been maliciously suppressed. Earl Fergus frowned slightly and did not say anything, but Bernal was slightly angry. "Which force did it?" Grey raised his eyebrows. It was reasonable to say that with his current reputation and status in the Purple Moon Kingdom, there should be very few forces that would dare to make things difficult for the Fergus family. The Clover Chamber of Commerce. There's nothing wrong with business competition, but this Chamber of Commerce is deliberately suppressing the Fergus family's shops. Several chambers of commerce have been forced to cancel their transactions with us, causing us a lot of losses. There was a hint of anger in Bernal's voice. The Clover Chamber of Commerce? Which force does this Chamber of Commerce belong to? Could it be that the Nahum family is behind it? Grey was naturally not familiar with business and naturally did not know the force behind the Clover Chamber of Commerce. However, with his current strength and status, he could probably imagine who they would dare to provoke. Yes, it's the Duke Nahum family. The Clover Chamber of Commerce is one of the several chambers of commerce under the Duke Nahum family. Bernal said, "The Nahum family, it really is this family." Grey's expression was slightly cold. Ever since he revealed his desolate-level strength, there were very few forces that dared to provoke the Fergus family. Even the Marquis family had to think twice. For example, the Warren Marquis family and the Oka Marquis family. They were extremely rampant in the past, but now there was no longer any news. During this Three Kingdoms exchange, the descendants of these two families were like mice that saw a cat when they saw Grey. They hid far away, afraid that they would be targeted by Grey. The only ones who dared to make an enemy of him were the three Duke families with extremely deep foundations and once produced a king-level warrior. Of the three Duke families, Grey was familiar with Elijah and Samantha, direct descendants of the Addison family, and had cooperated to explore the king's tomb. He had formed a friendship with Gavin Kenneth, a direct descendant of the Kenneth family, on the battlefield. Back then, they had worked together to fight against Codicus Blaze, so they could be considered friends. Naturally, these two families would not go against the Fergus family and deliberately suppress the Fergus family. Only the Nahum family had such a possibility. After all, his relationship with the Nahum family was extremely bad. After the last war with the Flame Kingdom, if he had not been rewarded with a noble title, he might have been attacked by the Nahum family. Grey, don't be impulsive. The Nahum family is powerful. We can't afford to offend them. Earl Fergus, who had been silent all this time, frowned. Don't worry, I won't be impulsive. Grey shook his head. If it was said that before going to the Jewel Kingdom, he was still quite afraid of the Nahum family. But now, this fear was gone. A king-level powerhouse's corpse, even if only the physical strength could be used, was comparable to a level 3 desolation level blood warrior. With this kind of strength, he no longer needed to be afraid of the Nahum family. After all, the Nahum family did not have a king-level powerhouse in charge. A few years ago, he was forced to hide from the Nahum family in fear for so long. He also had a lot of resentment in his heart. Now that the Nahum family took the initiative to provoke him, he had to teach the Nahum family a lesson no matter what. Although he could not kill because of the rule that aristocrats were not allowed to kill each other, there were policies and countermeasures. Even if he could not kill them, it should not be a problem to severely injure them and make them lie in bed for a few months, right? As one of the three strongest aristocratic families in the Purple Moon Kingdom, They naturally valued their reputation very much. The Nahum family would probably feel worse than being killed. On the second day, Gray left the Fergus castle. When he reappeared, he was near the Half Moon Lake in his earl's territory. He was not in a hurry to deal with the Fergus family's shop being suppressed. He had more important things to do now, which was to investigate the secret room in the Half Moon Castle. Initially, he estimated that if he wanted to investigate this secret room, he would need to at least have the combat strength of a level 3 desolation level. Originally, he thought that he would have to wait for a long time. However, he did not expect this trip to the Jewel Kingdom to yield an unexpected reward. He accidentally discovered that he could control king-level corpses. After controlling king-level corpses, he already had the combat strength of a level 3 desolation level. He was very curious. Just the fake secret room at the periphery had yielded a lot of rewards. What would the real secret room yield? Chapter 455. Young Master Gray. Entering the Half Moon Castle by boat, Gray was welcomed by the castle's servants. He saw the newly renovated Half Moon Castle. Since the last time he was here, the Fergus family had arranged for people to repair the Half Moon Castle. After a few months, the repair work had been completed, and the Half Moon Castle looked brand new. Passing through the well and the Formless Soul Attack Tunnel, Gray once again entered the hidden residence and came to the innermost secret room tunnel. Looking into the tunnel, he saw that it was more than 100 meters long. It was purple in color and was paved with precious rune material, amethyst stone. A huge rune mechanism was engraved on it. In the innermost part of the tunnel, there was a silver metal door that shone with a silver light. It was still intact after 1,000 years, and people couldn't help but want to see what kind of treasure was behind the door. Whoosh! Stanley Grinton was released from the purple ring by Gray. His expression was still blank, and there was a sword hanging on his waist. It wasn't his original weapon, as it had been taken away by the 2 king-level experts of the Jewel Kingdom. This sword was one of the spoils of war that Gray had obtained from the battle with the Flame Kingdom. It was a bronze-level magic weapon. Do it! A thought was sent to Stanley Grinton, and the originally blank Stanley Grinton, who hadn't moved since he came out, began to move. He strode into the tunnel. Whoosh! Just as Stanley Grinton stepped into the tunnel, a green light suddenly flashed and quickly attacked Stanley Grinton. Back then, Gray was heavily injured by this green light and had no choice but to give up exploring this secret room. Crack! In an instant, Stanley Grinton pulled out his sword and slashed. Then, not far from Stanley Grinton, the green light suddenly exploded. The whole process was so fast that Gray almost couldn't see it clearly. Fortunately, Gray's control over Stanley Grinton didn't need to be so precise as to how it should move or attack. It was all based on the body's own physical reactions to complete all of this. Otherwise, even if he was controlling a king-level expert's corpse, his own reaction speed would not be able to keep up, and he would only become a target. He commanded Stanley Grinton to continue moving forward. Immediately, he saw streaks of green light that were enough to injure Stanley Grinton even with his current defenses. Kacha, kacha! Stanley Grinton waved the sword in his hand continuously. Suddenly, one after another, the cyan rays of light that approached him suddenly shattered. Not a single ray of cyan light was able to get close to him. 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters. The deeper they went, the denser the green light became, and the more powerful it became. This passage was paved with a precious rune material called amethyst. It was inscribed with a very high-level rune mechanism that was extremely powerful. After 50 meters, the green light had become extremely dense and powerful. Outside the passage, Gray could even see that the magic weapon in Stanley Grinton's hand had a crack. He commanded Stanley Grinton to continue going deeper. Soon after, clang! There was a sound of metal breaking, and then the bronze magic weapon in Stanley Grinton's hand suddenly broke into 2 from the middle. Under the attack of the green light, the bronze-ranked mana weapon was finally damaged. Puff! After the magic sword was broken, a green light covered Stanley Grinton's body. A huge tear suddenly appeared on Stanley Grinton's clothes, and a shallow scratch appeared on his skin. Even the body of a king-stage powerhouse could not help but be injured under the green light, although it was only a slight scratch. Gray used his metallization ability on Stanley Grinton, and a silver metal light appeared on the surface of his body, and then he continued to move forward. Without his mana weapon, Stanley Glinton could only fight with his bare hands. Fortunately, Stanley Glinton's body's defense was no weaker than a bronze-ranked mana weapon. In fact, it was even stronger than a bronze-ranked mana weapon. 80 meters, 90 meters. The deeper he went, the denser the green radiance became, and the more powerful it became. Even with Stanley Grinton's reaction speed, it was unavoidable that he wasn't able to block it in time. The green wind blades avoided his fists and struck his body. However, his king-class body, which had been strengthened by metallization, was able to withstand the green wind blades without suffering any damage. 110 meters. 120 meters. Finally, Stanley Grinton walked to the silver metal door under the dense and powerful wind blades. This is a bit difficult. After letting Stanley Grinton out of the passage, Gray raised his eyebrows when he saw Stanley Grinton's tattered clothes. As he expected, Stanley Grinton did have the ability to pass through the runic mechanism. However, compared to having the ability to bring someone through, the latter was obviously more difficult. When Stanley Grinton passed through, it was inevitable that he would be cut by the wind blades. In the end, he had to rely on his strong physical defense to withstand it, let alone protect him through. It was obviously impossible to rely on Stanley Grinton to protect him through this runic mechanism passage. It's a pity that I can't synchronize my vision with the corpse's manipulation. Gray's manipulation of corpses had always been on a macro level, and he did not control every movement in detail. Naturally, he could not share the same vision as the corpse. Therefore, even if Stanley Grinton entered the secret room, he could not know what was in the secret room through Stanley Grinton. Most importantly, this runic mechanism passage, which was more than 100 meters long, was extremely powerful. Stanley Grinton could not use space items. Even if he ordered Stanley Grinton to move the things he saw out, it was very likely that they would be destroyed by the runic mechanism passage. I wonder if I can destroy this runic mechanism. Gray did not need to think about cracking the runic mechanism. He had never learned runic knowledge and did not know how to crack it. Moreover, even if he was a rune master, he probably did not have the ability to crack it. From the power of this runic mechanism, it was not difficult to imagine the complexity of this runic mechanism. Without the standard of a rune master, it was impossible to even think about it. The only thing he could think of was whether he could rely on Stanley Grinton's destructive power to destroy this runic mechanism. Gray immediately ordered Stanley Grinton to destroy the runic mechanism. Boom! Relying on his strong physical body to block the green wind blade, Stanley Grinton's punch, which was powerful enough to reach the third level of the desolate level, tore through the air and produced a sonic boom as it fiercely smashed into the wall paved with purple gold stone. Suddenly, there was a violent tremor, and the entire hall shook violently. Gray could not help but worry that the entire space would collapse and that he would be buried alive. Fortunately, such a thing did not happen. After the tremor, the hall did not show any signs of cracking or collapsing. Gray looked at the place where Stanley Grinton's fist had hit. There were no obvious fist marks on the purple wall, only some faint traces that could not be seen. As a top runic material, purple goldstone was naturally extremely hard, even harder than ordinary metals. However, it was absolutely impossible for it to be so hard that there was only such a degree of wear and tear under the destructive power of the third level of the desolate level. It should be known that with Stanley Grinton's current destructive power, he could even destroy an ordinary bronze-level magic weapon, let alone a stone like purple goldstone. Obviously, this was due to the runic mechanism's reinforcement. The runic mechanism strengthened the purple goldstone's defense, making it stronger than an ordinary bronze-level magic weapon. Moreover, this runic mechanism should have the effect of absorbing the damage from the wind-type blood fiends. Otherwise, this runic mechanism would very likely be destroyed by the power of the blood fiends that he had activated. Gray retreated further away and was prepared to leave this space as soon as he felt that something was wrong. He ordered Stanley Grinton to continue attacking. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the opponent's fists were like iron hammers that weighed tens of thousands of kilograms. Punch after punch landed on that location. The entire space shook violently, and some of the decorations in the space fell. Gray estimated that although this location was at least 100 meters underground, the castle above him should be able to feel it. Kacha! After a few dozen strikes, the wall paved with purple gold stone finally showed some changes. Following a crisp sound, several cracks appeared on the purple gold stone, and the runic patterns carved on it were damaged. However, in the runic mechanism's passageway, green wind blades were still attacking Stanley Grinton from time to time. Obviously, the destruction of the runic patterns did not affect the operation of the runic mechanism. Kacha! He ordered Stanley Grinton to continue hammering. The cracks became bigger and bigger, and finally, several huge purple gold stones shattered and fell from the wall. Following the fall of these huge purple gold stones, the green wind blades that constantly attacked the runic mechanism's passageway completely disappeared. Success! Seeing that the green wind blades had disappeared, Gray walked into the passageway and found that there were no green wind blades attacking him. A hint of joy flashed across his face as he ordered Stanley Grinton to be in front, while he followed behind Stanley Grinton in case there were any remnants of the runic mechanism. Chapter 456. Sure enough, it was necessary to be cautious. Following behind Stanley Grinton, he had only moved forward 10 meters before he was attacked by several green wind blades. If not for Stanley Grinton's protection, Gray would have been seriously injured or even killed. Destroy the rune mechanism. Move forward. Destroy the rune mechanism. Move forward. After walking and stopping for an hour or two, Gray finally arrived in front of the silver metal door. Behind him was a rune mechanism that had been completely destroyed. The silver metal door was 2 meters high and 3 meters wide. In the middle, there was a clear keyhole. Do I need a key? Seeing the keyhole, Gray was speechless. After more than 1,000 years, he had no idea where to find the key to this secret room. He could only try to open it with brute force. However, he did not know how strong the silver metal door was. With Stanley Grinton's destructive power at the 3rd level of the desolated level, could he break it open? He tried to push the silver metal door. Creak! An unexpected scene occurred. The silver metal door, which he thought was locked, actually cracked open under his push. He could already vaguely see the yellow stone floor behind it. It's not locked. His heart filled with surprise. Gray exerted force with both hands and pushed open the silver metal door. Suddenly, the 2 heavy doors slowly opened, and the space inside slowly appeared in Gray's vision. Suddenly, the moment the door opened, a terrifying pressure suddenly spread out from the secret room and fell on Gray's body. Gray felt his body suddenly sink, as if he was carrying a boulder of tens of thousands of kilograms. This is pressure? Gray was surprised. Recently, he had become very familiar with the feeling of pressure. Stanley Grinton had it. After all, he was a king stage expert. Even after death, there was still pressure on his body. However, compared to when he was alive, this pressure had become extremely weak. Withstanding the pressure, Gray looked into the secret room. There was no light in the secret room, but with night vision, the situation in the secret room was still clear. On the left side of the room, there was a bookshelf. On the bookshelf, there were about 20 books. A little further in, there was a row of long weapon racks. On the weapon racks, there were many weapons of various colors. On the right side of the secret chamber, there was a stone platform on the outermost side. On the stone platform, there were many yellow metal utensils of various sizes. The large ones could hold dozens of portions, while the small ones could only hold 1 portion. Inside, there were several purple wooden boxes, each about the size of an ordinary suitcase. And in the middle of this secret chamber, at the innermost wall, was the source of the heavy pressure. It was a skeleton in clothes. The reason why it was determined to be a skeleton was because the exposed arms and the jade-like bones were clearly visible. It's at least at the magic light level. The pressure coming from the skeleton was much stronger than the pressure coming from Stanley Gritton's body. With such a strong pressure, even after death, Gray determined that this skeleton was most likely the skeleton of a magic light level expert. I didn't feel any pressure before. The silver metal door should have the effect of isolating pressure, blocking it. How could a powerhouse, at least at the magic light level, die silently in this secret chamber? Gray was puzzled. Even during the Empire's era, a magic light level existence was bound to be an extremely terrifying existence. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be possible for one to die silently in such a secret chamber. As for the ruins of the Empire that he, Sophia, and Teresa had once explored, there was a skeleton suspected to be at the magic light level. It was obvious that this person had been killed. The huge crater under the skeleton was left behind when it was killed. Withstanding the pressure, Gray walked into the secret chamber. The current him was different from when he first explored the ruins of the Empire. At that time, he only had the strength of a berserker and could only get within a few dozen meters of the skeleton. However, it was different now. He had reached the second level of the berserker level, and his physical defense was as strong as the first level of the desolation level. Even a berserker would find it difficult to injure him. With such a strong physical body, it was naturally impossible for him to be stopped by the skeleton's pressure. Gray first walked to the yellow metal containers on the right. Among the items present, these were the ones that attracted Gray the most. The yellow metal containers were made of the same material as the two portions of the king beast's blood in the fake secret chamber outside. Needless to say, these containers contained magic potions that were as valuable as the king beast's blood. Moreover, they were sealed very well, so they should still be effective. Gray picked them up one by one and checked the words engraved on the bottles. Spirit Burning Potion, Stealth Potion, Hunter Potion. The potions were all well preserved and had medicinal effects. However, it was a pity that Gray did not understand the effects of these potions, so he did not dare to consume them carelessly. Consuming potions carelessly could lead to death. This was the case in his previous life, and it was the same in this world. Why would there be such potions in the secret chamber of the Empire? When he saw the name of one of the potions, Gray was shocked when he opened the bottle and took a sniff. The words engraved on the bottle were Flame Potion. This was the name of the potion that he won from Niklos Blaze at the banquet held in the Purple Moon Kingdom. At first, he thought that it was just the same name. However, after he took a sniff, he immediately determined that this bottle of Flame Potion was exactly the same as the one he had consumed. The Flame Potion was a unique potion of the Flame Kingdom. Logically speaking, it should not have appeared in the secret chamber of the Empire from 1,000 years ago. However, it did. This made him doubt his judgment of the Millennium Secret Chamber. This must be the secret chamber of the Empire. That skeleton's strength was at least of the magic light level. Only the Empire would have such a strong person. Then, what's with this bottle of Flame Potion? Gray frowned and thought hard. It took him a while before he figured out the reason. It was rumored that the Four Kingdoms were formed on the ruins of the Empire. The founders of the Four Kingdoms occupied the wealth left behind by the Empire. To a certain extent, the Four Kingdoms were the continuation of the Empire. The formula for the Flame Potion might have existed 1,000 years ago. However, it was later mastered by the founders of the Flame Kingdom and became powerful. In the end, not only was the country named the Flame Kingdom, even the family name was changed to Flame. The royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom also possessed the magic potion known as the Purple Moon Potion. If he was not mistaken, the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom also inherited the Purple Moon Potion from the Empire's ruins. There are actually a total of 9 bottles. After checking, Gray discovered that there were quite a few flame potions among these magic potions. There were a total of 9 bottles. This surprised him. He didn't dare to casually consume other potions, but this flame potion was something he could consume. After looking through all the small metal bottles, Gray looked at the large metal bottles. There were a total of 3 of them. Judging from the size of the metal bottles, each of them could hold between 10 to 100 portions of liquid. He looked at the closest metal bottle. Wind Falcon. This was the metal bottle of a Blood Beast King Wind Falcon. Gray had obtained the blood of this blood beast in the secret room before. However, there was only one portion of it. From a volume of this metal bottle and the level of the liquid, there were at least 30 to 40 portions. Although he already had the blood of a king-class blood beast, it didn't mean that the blood of a king-class blood beast was useless. The blood of a blood beast could also increase one's strength. It was no different from potions that could increase one's strength. The blood of a king-class blood beast was even more so. The blood of a blood beast king wind falcon could be used to increase one's strength. Even if the effect was weaker than the flame potion, it wouldn't be much weaker. He looked at another metal bottle. This was the metal bottle of a blood beast king horned goat. It also contained 30 to 40 portions. Gray looked at the last metal bottle and saw the words Diamond King Beast written on it. It's actually this blood beast. Seeing the name of this blood beast, Gray was slightly surprised. In the outer library, Gray had once obtained a book called Physical Abilities. In that book, there was an introduction to this type of blood fiend. This was because it was a monarch-level blood beast with golden fur all over its body. It had an ape-like appearance, but it had a single horn and only one eye. This was a purely physical, king-level blood fiend, which left a deep impression on Gray. The reason why it had left such a deep impression on Gray was that it was an extremely powerful blood fiend, even among special blood fiends. Generally speaking, a blood fiend with a special body type would either have a strong physical body and powerful strength, terrifying speed and strength, or a strong physical body and terrifying speed. In short, any two of the three aspects of speed, strength, or defense would be at the peak of the same realm. However, this type of blood beast was extremely unique. Whether it was in terms of speed, strength, or defense, they were all at the peak of the same realm. A strong physical body, powerful strength, and terrifying speed made this type of blood beast extremely powerful. Even among special blood fiends, there were few blood fiends that could compare to it. I originally planned to look for the black crystal beast or the golden rhinoceros after I was done with my business. Now, it seems that I don't need to. Moreover, I have a better choice. Gray's eyes were blazing. The black crystal beast could raise his strength and defense to the peak of the same realm. The golden rhinoceros could raise his defense to the peak of the same realm. However, this Diamond King beast could raise his speed, strength, and defense to the peak of the same realm. It was definitely a better choice than the black crystal beast or the golden rhinoceros. Chapter 457. Suppressing the pleasant surprise in his heart, Gray put away all the blood and magic potions. Withstanding the pressure, he arrived at the inner side of the room, where there were 5 purple wooden chests. Opening the first chest, a sea of red entered his eyes. It was a chest full of red gems. They were top-grade rune materials, blood gems. This was a rune material that was far more precious than purple gold stones. Opening the second chest, a frost-like color entered his eyes. These were frost gems, a top-grade rune material that was no less precious than blood gems. The third chest, the fourth chest, the fifth chest. In the end, all 5 chests were opened by Gray. They were all precious rune materials. All of them are precious rune materials. Could the owner of this secret room be a rune master? Although he didn't get any gold coins or magic coins, Gray didn't feel that it was a pity. These were all extremely precious top-grade rune materials. If he sold them, 20 to 30 million gold coins wouldn't be a problem. One could imagine how high their value was. However, he was a little puzzled. Why did the owner of this secret room collect so many rune materials? Could it be that the owner of this secret room was a rune master? Was the rune mechanism outside also arranged by the owner? With such doubts in mind, Gray put the 5 chests into his purple ring and walked towards the bookshelf on the left. The books that were placed in the depths of the secret room were definitely not something that the books in the library outside could compare to. He was a little curious as to what kind of books were on these shelves. Would it be extremely precious blood spell books or blood skills? Arriving next to the bookshelf, Lin Yun casually took out a book. The cover of the book was leather, and the pages were also leather. Even after 1,000 years, the pages were still undamaged, and the words on the book were still clearly visible. Sharp Wind Rune. Seeing the words on the book, Gray had already expected the contents of the book. Sure enough, after opening it, his guess was confirmed. The book was full of large sections of cryptic text records, as well as pages of extremely complicated runic arrays. This was a high-grade wind rune book. It was extremely precious. If a rune master saw it, he would definitely be wild with joy and be willing to exchange his wealth for it. However, it wasn't very useful to Gray. Without any foundation in runes, he couldn't understand this book at all. It was like a primary school student reading a university function textbook. It was too difficult to understand. Gray took out another book to read. Frost Rune, an ice attribute rune book. It was also an extremely high-grade rune book that Gray couldn't understand. Putting it away, Linyan picked up another book to read. It was also a rune book. After looking through several books in succession, he found that they were all books of this type. Their value was indeed extremely high, but to Gray, they were not very practical. He could tell that these books were all rune books. Now, he could basically confirm that the owner of this secret room was a rune grandmaster. Otherwise, it would be impossible to collect so many rune materials and rune books. Gray checked the 20 or so books one by one and found that all of them were related to runes. They were all extremely valuable and highly specialized books that weren't very useful to Gray. Gray looked past the bookshelf and looked at the weapon rack. There were a dozen or so magic weapons on the rack. There were sword-type magic weapons, saber-type magic weapons, axe-type magic weapons, and spear-type magic weapons. They were emitting colorful halos. Just from their appearance, Linyan could tell that these magic weapons weren't simple. I wonder if there are any silver-grade magic weapons here. Looking at the dozen or so magic weapons, Gray's heart was filled with excitement. Surephone pulled out a sword-shaped mana weapon and infused it with blood power. Suddenly, a cyan light attached itself to the weapon, causing it to grow to 3 meters long. At the same time, an ear-piercing buzzing sound came from the weapon. Coming to the outside passage, Gray slashed the purple gold stone wall with his sword. Boom! The purple gold stone wall was intact. Although the runic circle had been destroyed, the reinforced lines were not damaged and were still working. Its power is about the first level of the Desolate grade. This is a pinnacle bronze magic weapon. Gray judged after feeling the power of the attack. He was now at the second level of the Barbarian grade. Infusing it with blood energy, it could exert the destructive power of the first level of the Desolate grade. This meant that it was a pinnacle bronze magic weapon. After testing the dozen or so magic weapons, even the non-sword type ones, Gray found that these magic weapons were all pinnacle bronze magic weapons. Pinnacle bronze magic weapons were only inferior to silver grade magic weapons in terms of quality. Generally speaking, only a few Count families, the Marquis family, and the Duke family owned them, and they were extremely rare. There were more than a dozen pinnacle bronze magic weapons here, and their value was definitely very high. He had never bought them before, so he didn't have an accurate understanding of the specific price. However, Gray estimated that if these dozen or so pinnacle bronze magic weapons were to be sold, they should be worth at least 40 to 50 million gold coins. Moreover, these things were extremely rare. They were basically priceless, so he didn't have to worry about not being able to sell them. It's a pity that there are no silver-grade magic weapons. The only thing that Gray regretted was that there weren't any silver-grade magic weapons among these weapons. I'm greedy, Gray smiled. His harvest today was already big enough. If all these things were to be converted into gold coins, they would be worth hundreds of millions of gold coins. His harvest was extremely huge. As for the silver-grade magic weapons, these things were extremely rare even during the era of the Empire. It was normal that he didn't get it. After putting away the dozen or so weapons, Gray looked at the skeleton of a magic light powerhouse leaning against the innermost wall. If there was a most precious thing in this room, it would definitely be on this magic light powerhouse. Withstanding the pressure, Gray walked step by step towards the skeleton of the magic light powerhouse. As he got closer, the pressure from the skeleton of the magic light powerhouse became stronger and stronger. Fortunately, his current physical strength was extremely strong, and he successfully withstood it. He came to the side of the skeleton and sized it up. As a top-notch powerhouse, the clothes on the skeleton were naturally not simple. Although it looked like a casual aristocratic attire, the material was extremely unusual. Even after 1,000 years, it still wasn't completely damaged. He once suffered a very serious injury when he was alive. Gray looked at the skeleton's chest. There, the aristocratic attire was cut open, and he could see the jade-like ribs inside. And these ribs, without exception, were all broken in two at the chest. The skeleton's chest was almost cut in half. If Gray's guess was correct, this should be the skeleton's fatal wound. Gray thought of the ruins of the empire that he, Sophia, and Teresa had explored. They had encountered the skeleton of a powerhouse suspected to be of the magic light rank. The other party should have died from a punch to the heart. And now, this powerhouse, suspected to be of the magic light rank, was almost cut in half. What exactly happened 1,000 years ago? Why did two powerhouses suspected to be of the magic light rank die so miserably? Gray held his chin with one hand, his heart full of doubts. 1,000 years ago, the empire suddenly disappeared in an extremely short period of time. Some guessed that it was destroyed by the four great kingdoms and replaced it. Some guessed that it was destroyed by the mysterious ghost merchants. And some guessed that it was met with a powerful external force. Now, it seemed that the possibility of it being destroyed by the four great kingdoms could almost be eliminated. The strength of the four great kingdoms was simply not enough to destroy the empire. And the possibility of it being destroyed by the ghost merchants could not be eliminated. After all, Gray had seen the power of the ghost merchants. They could create an illusory space that filled an entire city. Such a method was simply unimaginable and indescribably powerful. However, in his heart, Gray felt that the empire was not destroyed by the ghost merchants. There was no basis for this, and it could only be said to be a kind of intuition. From the rules of the ghost merchant's barter, it could be seen that the ghost merchant was a very principled person. Would such a principled person do something to destroy an empire? In Gray's view, it was not very likely. Even if they really had a grudge with the empire, they should have killed the first and not implicated the entire empire. Therefore, in Gray's view, it was more likely that it was the work of a powerful external force. This force came to this continent to do something or to search for something. Because of this matter, they had a conflict with the empire, which ultimately led to the destruction of the empire. And this force left this continent after the empire was destroyed, which led to the rise of the four great kingdoms. If this force was still around, the four great kingdoms would not have had the chance to rise. Gray's gaze searched the skeleton and the surroundings, wanting to find something valuable. A saber? Soon, he found an outline on the ground. Judging from the shape of the outline, it should be a saber. After 1,000 years, a lot of dust had accumulated in the secret room, causing a lot of dust to stick to the surface of the saber. He happily brushed away the dust and grabbed the saber in his hand. If the weapon used by a powerhouse suspected to be at the magic light rank was below the silver rank, Gray would not believe it. It was even possible that it was at the gold rank. After all, the other party was a powerhouse suspected to be at the magic light rank. But soon, the expression on his face turned into deep regret. It's actually broken. This was a silver-white battle saber with a bronze hilt. The hilt was carved with a giant beast that Gray did not recognize. The hilt was the upper and lower mouth of the giant beast, and the blade seemed to be spat out from the mouth of the giant beast. However, the silver-white blade was only 1 meter long. At the tip, Gray estimated that about 1/3 of the area had completely disappeared. This was a broken saber. Chapter 458. Heartache, Extreme Heartache. Looking at the broken part of the blade, Gray felt extreme heartache. He had never felt such heartache before. A magical weapon that was suspected to be a silver grade, or even a gold grade, had been destroyed just like that. Not to mention Gray, even a king-level expert would feel the same heartache. Maybe there's still some of its power left. With anticipation in his heart, Gray poured the power of blood into the blade. However, after a long time, there was still no change to the blade. It was like a bucket that had its bottom cut open. No matter how much water was poured into it, it did not feel full. After pouring more than half of the power of blood into it, there was still no change. Gray stopped. Even if it was a silver-gray magical weapon, it would not have no reaction after he poured so much power of blood into it. This blade had been completely destroyed. There was no doubt about it. As this blade had once been at least a silver-grade weapon, it should be quite sturdy. However, that was all it had. It could not exert any of its power. In his hands, it was even less useful than an ordinary bronze-grade magical weapon. It's a good match for Stanley Grinton. Gray helplessly realized that the only use of this blade was for Stanley Grinton. One had no power of blood, leaving only a strong physical body. The other had lost all ability, leaving only sturdiness. To a certain extent, the corpse and the blade were a good match. He passed the broken blade to Stanley Grinton and let him try to swing it. Poof! The destructive power of the third level of the Desolation grade brought about a strong gust of wind. It tore the clothes on the suspected king-level expert into pieces, revealing the skeleton wrapped in the tattered clothes. It was so clean that there was nothing on it. Logically speaking, the other party should have a spatial item, but judging from the way the other party died, Gray suspected that the spatial item on the other party's body should have fallen into the hands of the person who killed him. A map. Pieces of torn clothes floated in the secret room. Gray suddenly realized that there was a rather large map in the middle of these pieces of cloth. The material used to make the map seemed to be some kind of silk. It was so soft that it floated along with the rags. Gray stretched out his hand and carefully caught the map, afraid that it would tear apart like a piece of cloth. However, to Gray's surprise, the silk used to make the map was quite tough. Even after 1,000 years, it did not decay. On the map, there was a huge dark red pattern written in fresh blood. It was most likely drawn by this magic light powerhouse before his death. It was written in blood and right before death. Obviously, this should be a very important message. Gray looked at it carefully, but he couldn't figure out what it was. He looked at the map as a whole, trying to figure out where it was. This should be the map of this continent. 1,000 years had passed, and many things had changed. Many landforms had changed. After some time, Gray confirmed that this was a complete map of the continent. Gray took out the map of the Purple Moon Kingdom from the Purple Ring and compared it with the map of the continent. Suddenly, Gray's pupils shrank. This place, on the map of the continent, there was a circle written in fresh blood. Within the circle, there was a triangle, and in the middle of the triangle, there was a circular symbol. Comparing it to the map of the Purple Moon Kingdom, Gray suddenly realized that one of the points where the circle and triangle intersected was a place he had been to before. It was in the Scarlet Leaf Forest, a place where Gray had encountered 100,000 ghosts. To be precise, it was at the place where the Palace of Unknown Style was. Is it a coincidence, or is it related? Gray was bewildered, thinking of the mystery of the palace. To be able to attract hundreds of thousands of ghosts, the architectural style did not belong to the era of the Empire, nor did it belong to the era of the kingdom. There is also a broken sword that was suspected to be a weapon of the gods. All these signs pointed to the extraordinary palace, and it contained a shocking secret. And now, this palace seemed to be related to the mark left behind by a magic light-class powerhouse during the Empire's era. This made him feel bewildered. He didn't know if there was a connection between the two, and if there was, what was the connection? He took out the maps of the Scarlet Kingdom, the Jewel Kingdom, and the Flame Kingdom, wanting to find the other 2 points, as well as the specific location of the circle in the middle. This point should be in the Scarlet Kingdom's Black Fog Swamp. This point should be in the Jewel Kingdom's Sapphire Mountain. This circle should be in the Red Desert of the Flame Kingdom. He discovered that the diagram drawn by this magic light-rank powerhouse before his death had the 4 most iconic locations. They were located in the regions of the 4 great kingdoms. It could be said that it spanned an extremely large area, almost encompassing the entire continent. Assuming that the relic is related to this point, the point in the Purple Moon Kingdom has a mysterious relic with a broken sword in it. Then, where are the other 3 locations? Gray narrowed his eyes. The point in the Purple Moon Kingdom was using some mysterious method to repair a sword that was suspected to have been used by the gods. Then, Would the other three locations also have a weapon that was suspected to have been used by the gods, just like the broken sword? What was the purpose of using triangles and circles to connect the four locations? Gray looked at the map drawn with blood. Suddenly, the more he looked, the more shocked he became. Why does this look like a simplified version of the runic matrix? This can't be a runic matrix that covers the entire continent, right? Gray was shocked by his own conclusion. A huge runic matrix that covered the entire continent. How huge was this runic matrix? How huge was this amount of work? If it was really a runic matrix, then what kind of force set up this runic matrix? The Empire? Unlikely. Judging from the architectural style, it was not the style of the Empire. Some force that existed before the Empire? This was possible. Until now, the history that he knew was only the Empire from 1,000 years ago. As for what kind of force existed before the Empire, he did not know. Perhaps there was another force that existed before the Empire, and it was a force that was even more powerful than the Empire. After all, from the murals in the palace, he could vaguely judge the strength of this force. A force that destroyed the Empire? This was also possible. The force that destroyed the Empire must have come with a purpose. From a map drawn by the Magic Light level fighter, the force that destroyed the Empire must be related to this huge runic matrix. Perhaps they were looking for this huge runic matrix, or perhaps this huge runic matrix was set up by them. Gray's mind was in a mess. He felt that this thing was probably not something that he could come into contact with at the moment, but he was tempted to find out more. He wanted to go to the other three important locations of this runic matrix to explore and see what was in these three locations. According to his guess, the other three locations were likely to have broken weapons that were suspected to have been used by the gods. This huge runic matrix should be a huge repair runic matrix. To set up such a huge runic matrix on a continent, this made Gray extremely shocked. Speaking of which, the sword-shaped weapon that was suspected to have been used by the gods in the Red Leaf Forest seems to be about to be repaired. Suddenly, Gray sucked in a breath of cold air. A trace of horror arose in his heart. Did the force that set up this runic matrix still exist? According to his guess, this force was likely to exist. To be able to set up such a huge runic matrix, it must be an extremely powerful force. It might even be more powerful than the Empire from 1,000 years ago. It would be very difficult to destroy such a large force. What really made Gray feel shocked was that this huge runic matrix seemed to be repairing the weapon that was suspected to have been used by the gods. It seemed to be about to be repaired. It could be imagined that after the weapon was repaired, this force would inevitably descend on this continent. This was a force that was powerful enough to surpass the Empire. The arrival of such a powerful force would inevitably have a strong impact on the original forces on this continent. If things went wrong, the original forces might be destroyed. The most terrifying possibility was that the force that set up such a huge runic matrix and the force that destroyed the Empire belonged to different forces. If that was the case, it would not be a force that surpassed the Empire that descended, but two forces that surpassed the Empire. It was very likely that this continent would become a battlefield and a terrifying conflict would break out. At that time, it would be a disaster for the forces on this continent. After checking the secret room and finding that there were no hidden compartments, Gray hurriedly left the secret room. The thoughts that were triggered in this secret room made him feel suffocated. After staying in Half Moon Castle for a day, Gray set off for Shamrock Chamber of Commerce's headquarters. He had already checked the secret room. It was time to deal with Shamrock Chamber of Commerce's troubles. Because there were no teleportation coordinates set in nearby places, he could only hurry to Shamrock Chamber of Commerce. A few days later, he entered a huge city with millions of people and saw a huge building. This was an extremely huge building. It was built with white stone and had a total of 3 floors. There were many complicated patterns carved on it. From afar, it looked like a piece of art that was meticulously carved out of white jade. In front of the building, there was a huge white stone plaza. There were many high-end carriages parked in the plaza. At the entrance of the building, there were men and women dressed in luxurious clothes going in and out. They all had the temperament of a person of high status. It was obvious that their identities were not simple. This was the headquarters of Shamrock Chamber of Commerce that directly belonged to the Nahum family. Chapter 459. How impressive! Gray walked down from a rental carriage and looked at the headquarters of the Chamber of Commerce in front of him. The corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a sneer. As the Chamber of Commerce directly under the Nahum family of the Third Duke, Shamrock Chamber of Commerce was naturally very large in scale. It had branches in many cities of the Purple Moon Kingdom. It could be said that the branches were spread throughout the Purple Moon Kingdom. They were involved in a wide range of businesses, such as medicinal herbs, leather, tea leaves, jewelry, and so on. Every year, they brought millions of gold to the Nahum family. The Fergus family was in the medicinal herbs business. When they were working with the Sidney family, the Fergus family had already tried to grow medicinal herbs in their territory. After so many years, especially after the Fergus family became a count, the scale of their medicinal herbs business had multiplied several times, becoming the biggest source of income for the Fergus family. After the Sidney family met with disaster, there was no way to cooperate with them. The Fergus family began to look for business partners to export their medicinal herbs. After a lot of effort, they established a stable relationship with a few business partners. However, under the coercion and enticement of the Clover Merchant Guild, these business partners suddenly changed their minds and canceled their cooperation with the Fergus family, causing the Fergus family's medicinal herbs to be seriously unsaleable. Some of the dried and easily preserved herbs were still fine, but some of the freshly picked herbs suffered heavy losses due to the unsaleability. They were losing money almost every day. With Gray's current wealth, this amount of money was nothing in his eyes. Even if the Fergus family did not have any source of income in the future, he could still guarantee that the Fergus family would not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of their lives. However, it was one thing to not care about it, and another to be maliciously suppressed and humiliated. Nobles cared a lot about their reputation. Sometimes, a small compromise could be resolved peacefully, but in the end, it would develop into an intense conflict. The reason for this was not because the heads of these noble families were simple-minded, but because it concerned the family's image to the outside world. A bad situation could put the family in a disadvantageous position. When a family showed weakness to the outside world, many families would not mind stepping on them. It was human nature to bully the weak and fear the strong. However, when a clan displayed their strength in every aspect, the other clans would hesitate. Was it worth it to step on them and cause both sides to suffer? The Fergus family was now facing such a situation. If they didn't respond to the Nahum family suppression, they would likely be suppressed even more severely by the Nahum family. Of course, Gray wouldn't act recklessly because of this. The reason he dared to attack Shamrock Merchant Guild was because he no longer feared the Nahum family behind Shamrock Merchant Guild. Since he was already fearless, why should he endure? Sister, Shamrock Merchant Guild's asking price is too high. If we buy herbs at this price, we will lose at least 20% of our profits this year. In front of him, a young woman and a young man walked out of the Shamrock Chamber of Commerce and passed by Gray. The young man complained while the young woman frowned. The young woman's name was Leander. She was beautiful and had the temperament of a businesswoman. The young man's name was Quentin Leander. His face was slightly immature, and he should be less than 20 years old. The two of them came from the Leander family, a merchant family. This was a pure merchant family. They operated a chamber of commerce called Dawn Chamber of Commerce. The main business of this Chamber of Commerce was to refine herbs into finished products and sell them to the outside world. The original herb supplier had already gone bankrupt under the suppression of Shamrock Merchant Guild. They had no choice but to cooperate with Shamrock Merchant Guild. However, they didn't expect Shamrock Merchant Guild's asking price to be several times higher than the previous supplier. If they followed Shamrock Merchant Guild's price, they would lose at least 20% of their profits this year. Bang! Suddenly, they heard a loud noise coming from behind them. They were shocked and looked back. Suddenly, they saw that a huge pit had appeared at the entrance of Shamrock Merchant Guild, paved with 100 jade slabs that they had just walked through. A young man was standing in this pit. It was the young man who had just passed by them. The other party was dressed in a moon-white noble attire. His black hair fluttered in the wind as he stood quietly in the pothole. A terrifying aura emanated from his body, as if he was an unsheathed sword that was stuck in the ground. Someone actually dares to cause trouble in front of Shamrock Merchant Guild. Doesn't he know that the power behind Shamrock Merchant Guild is Duke Nahum's family? The young man's face was full of shock. Someone actually dared to cause trouble for Shamrock Merchant Guild. Behind Shamrock Merchant Guild was the colossus that was the Nahum family. As one of the largest aristocratic families in the Purple Moon Kingdom that had produced a king-tier master, the Nahum family's strength was unquestionable. There were several desolate blood warriors in the family, and there were more than 10 barbarian blood warriors. Their strength was written in blood. Once, a merchant family with a wild blood warrior in charge had a conflict with this family. However, in just a few days, the Nahum family had uprooted the Nahum family. One could imagine how terrifying the Nahum family was. Now, someone actually dared to challenge this family. In his opinion, this was simply inconceivable. In his heart, although he was extremely dissatisfied with Shamrock Merchant Guild because of their expensive medicinal herbs, he was still not optimistic about the man who challenged Shamrock Merchant Guild. Shamrock Merchant Guild was simply unshakable. Who's there? At the entrance of Shamrock Merchant Guild, more than 10 people rushed out almost immediately after the noise was made. All of them were wearing battle armor. They were in charge of Shamrock Merchant Guild security today. Each of them had a faint murderous aura. There was no doubt that this was a group of wild blood warriors who had seen blood and killed people before. Moreover, each and every one of them was brimming with energy, and their gazes were sharp and spirited. Even the weakest of them had the strength of a ferocious blood warrior. Only a clan with an extremely deep foundation like the Nahum clan would dare to use ferocious blood warriors as guards. How dare you cause trouble in the Shamrock Chamber of Commerce? Among the dozen people, a middle-aged man looked coldly at Gray. He originally thought that it would be an extremely peaceful day. After all, it had been many years since anyone dared to cause trouble in Shamrock Merchant Guild. He did not expect that he would encounter it, and it was actually just one person. He glanced at the pothole under Gray's feet and narrowed his eyes imperceptibly. To be able to create such a pothole on the stone floor, this person's strength was not weak. However, this was Shamrock Merchant Guild, the Shamrock Merchant Guild that belonged to the Nahum family. Naturally, he could not show weakness here. Who are you? His face was filled with anger, and his eyes were cold. The air was filled with coldness, as if it could freeze Gray into an ice sculpture at any time. This was not a seemed, but a fact. The middle-aged man cultivated the Frost Tiger blood art and had the strength of a wild blood warrior. Once he attacked, it was enough to freeze more than 10 people into ice sculptures. Those who are here to collect debts, call out your guild's president. Being stared at by the other party's cold eyes, Gray's expression was calm. After experiencing difficult battles on the battlefield, this kind of aura was child's play. How could it possibly intimidate him? As for the coldness in the air, Gray did not care. Even a first desolate grade wild blood warrior could not damage a strong defense. So how could the middle-aged man's ice ability hurt him? Collect debts? What a joke. Shamrock Merchant Guild owes you anything? How dare you cause trouble in Shamrock Merchant Guild? Capture him. The middle-aged man ordered the blood warriors who followed him. Immediately, more than 10 blood warriors pulled out their weapons and pounced on Gray. Each of them had the strength of a wild blood warrior. More than 10 magic power weapons activated various abilities and attacked Gray from all directions. Even with more than 10 people attacking, there was no chaos. Several people in front and several behind, and they could change positions at any time. Their cooperation was very good, and one could tell at a glance that they had practiced siege techniques. Gray did not even look at these people. Suddenly, more than 10 purple lightning snakes, each as thick as a finger, sputtered in all directions with him as the center. Bang, bang, bang. The finger-thick lightning was extremely small, but when it hit the bodies of more than 10 people, it was like a huge thunderbolt in the sky. The bodies of more than 10 people were all charred and sent flying. They landed heavily on the ground and could not get up for a long time. Only their rising and falling chests showed that although these people were heavily injured, they were not dead. This was deliberately done by Gray. Otherwise, with his current Berserker blood at the second level, the power of the lightning he displayed would not be able to keep these people, who only had the strength of a wild blood warrior, alive. These people were just small fries who were following orders. Gray did not have the intention to bicker with them. Whoosh! Just as Gray repelled these people, a white cold air suddenly appeared and surrounded Gray. It was less than a meter away from Gray. From beginning to end, the middle-aged man had never thought of relying on these dozen or so people to capture Gray. He had ordered these dozen or so people to attack Gray in order to distract him so that he wouldn't be able to take care of anything else. The final trump card was himself. However, he obviously overestimated himself. In the face of absolute power, all calculations were useless. Crackle! Just as the cold air was about to reach Gray, a bolt of purple lightning appeared and struck the cold air. The cold air dissipated instantly, but the purple lightning didn't lose its momentum and struck the middle-aged man. Bang! The middle-aged man was also sent flying with his body charred. In just a short while, many merchants had appeared in the surroundings. They were all merchants who came to the Chamber of Commerce to do business, and among them was the pair of siblings. They were watching from afar, looking at Gray as if they were looking at a monster. They didn't look optimistic about him. Even when they saw Gray severely injuring the guards of Shamrock Chamber of Commerce and making them unable to get up, their expressions did not change because they knew that Shamrock Chamber of Commerce was not limited to this. Sure enough, soon, dozens of people appeared at the entrance of the Chamber of Commerce. Each of them had a powerful aura and their eyes were cold. They looked at Gray with hostility. Chapter 460. How dare you cause trouble in the Clover Chamber of Commerce? A man rushed to the front. He was dressed in gray battle armor and had 2 tufts of beard on his face. At this moment, the 2 tufts of beard were raised in anger. When he was 30 meters away from Gray, he used his Blood Fiend ability. The moisture in the air condensed into a large amount of water. The large amount of water gathered and finally turned into a huge water snake. The water snake's huge tail whipped the ground, causing a serious crack to appear on the stone floor. Then, it suddenly jumped out from the ground, revealing its sharp fangs and biting towards Gray. He was a barbarian blood warrior. His Blood Fiend ability was to control water. To be precise, his ability was to transform water into a snake to attack his target. The huge water snake slithered on the ground at an extremely fast speed. In an instant, it was already close to Gray. It opened its ferocious mouth as if it wanted to swallow Gray whole. Gray did not move, but in front of him, 2 zigzagging purple lightning appeared. One attacked the water snake. The water snake's huge body exploded with a loud bang and sputtered on the square with a powerful force. Immediately, potholes were left on the stone floor of the square. The other attacked the man in gray battle armor. The man in gray battle armor's expression changed, and he hurriedly dodged. However, the speed of the lightning was too fast, and his body was grazed by it. He retreated again and again. The places on his body that were struck by the lightning were char-black. He touched the ground with his spear to support himself so that he did not fall. After all, he was a barbarian blood warrior. Obviously, he was not comparable to those people in front of him. However, he still suffered heavy injuries. He clenched his teeth and created another water snake to attack Gray. "We'll help you." 2 more figures rushed out from the Clover Chamber of Commerce. One was dressed in yellow battle armor, and the other in white battle armor. They attacked Gray together. The one dressed in yellow battle armor was a man. He stomped his foot, and a large number of earth spikes pierced through the stone floor and extended towards Gray. The one dressed in white battle armor was a woman. Under her shadow, a large number of shadows appeared and gave birth to shadow balls that attacked Gray. At the same time, 3 terrifying blood fiends attacked Gray at the same time. Gray's expression did not change. The 2 people who had appeared later were not weak. They had both reached the realm of Berserker blood warriors. It was enough to show how much importance the Nahum family placed on this place. However, this level of strength was still not enough for him. In front of him, a long green river appeared. Cold air filled the air, wind blades rose and fell. and the ground under his feet was frozen solid. The earth spikes couldn't pierce through the ice and couldn't reach Gray's feet at all. The balls formed by the shadow substance were all shattered, and the water snakes turned into ice sculptures and were split into several pieces. Under Gray's control, the ice wind blades spread out to strike the three of them. Their combat suits were broken, and they were sent flying. It took them a long time to get up. "Gray Fergus, you're Gray Fergus." Seeing that the three Berserker Blood Warriors had been defeated in a few moments, the dozens of people from Clover Chamber of Commerce who had followed them all changed their expressions. Among them, a blond man looked at Gray with shock in his eyes. Was Gray's reputation in the Purple Moon Kingdom now big? Very big. However, Gray rarely participated in aristocratic gatherings. There were very few people who had actually seen Gray before. In addition, there were no means of photos in this world, so there weren't many people who knew about Gray. However, Gray's icy wind blade ability had long been circulated, and there was only one of its kind. Therefore, when Gray used his icy wind blade ability, there were immediately people who recognized it. Gray Fergus? Could it be that Earl Fergus who was recently in theft by the royal family? It's actually him. I heard that this Earl Fergus is young, but his strength is extremely strong. It's true. How did he become enemies with Clover Chamber of Commerce? The surrounding merchants were all well-informed and immediately guessed Gray's identity. "Earl Fergus, why did you attack Clover Chamber of Commerce? Why are you so heavy-handed?" At this time, there were already people from Clover Chamber of Commerce who had helped the three Berserker Blood Warriors up and found that all three of them were seriously injured. Someone angrily questioned Gray. "Why? Don't you know what Clover Chamber of Commerce has done?" Gray snorted. Clover Chamber of Commerce had maliciously suppressed the Fergus family, causing the Fergus family to suffer heavy losses. Now, they actually came to ask him about something. It was too funny. "President?" Someone looked at the blond man in confusion, obviously not knowing the reason. The blond man was about 40 years old, and his name was Lambert Neem. Seeing that a few people were looking at him, his expression turned slightly ugly. "Gray Fergus, Clover Chamber of Commerce is a chamber of commerce directly under the Nahum family. Are you sure you want to become enemies with the Nahum family?" He naturally knew why Gray had come looking for him. After all, he had received orders from above to suppress the Fergus family's shop. However, he didn't think that Gray would use such a direct method and come knocking on his door. "Sister, it must be because of the suppression of the Fergus family's shop." The eyes of the younger brother, Quentin Leandra, lit up as he thought of the reason. Before the Dawn Chamber of Commerce decided to work with Clover Chamber of Commerce, they had also considered working with the Fergus family. However, after learning that the Fergus family had been suppressed by Clover Chamber of Commerce and suffered heavy losses, they gave up. After all, it wasn't worth it to become enemies with Clover Chamber of Commerce over this. "You don't know what's good for you. Even now, you still dare to threaten me." The look in Gray's eyes suddenly turned cold. He could see that the decision to maliciously suppress the Fergus family was probably made by the chairman of Clover Chamber of Commerce himself. His face was covered in frost. His figure flashed as he quickly closed in on the chairman of Clover Chamber of Commerce. "What are you trying to do? Stop him." Many people in Clover Chamber of Commerce didn't know the reason behind this, but they naturally couldn't let Gray attack the chairman of their Chamber of Commerce. They all moved to stop him. Gray's response was simple and crude. Icy wind blades filled the air, and anyone who attacked him was sent flying with heavy injuries. Whoosh! Seeing Gray rushing over, the chairman of Clover Chamber of Commerce, Lambert Neem, hurriedly retreated and used his blood beast ability to block him. Orange-red flames spun and turned into a huge flaming flower that crashed into Gray. It actually had the power of a second-tier barbarian. As expected of the chairman of a large chamber of commerce, his combat power was even stronger than the three barbarian blood warriors. But it was still not enough. The icy wind blades stirred, and the flaming flower was extinguished. Lambert Neem was injured all over and was frozen into an ice sculpture. Gray walked over and melted the ice. He grabbed Lambert's neck with one hand and lifted him up like an eagle grabbing a chick. "You dare to attack the Fergus family?" Holding Lambert with his left hand, Gray slapped him hard with his right hand. The left side of Lambert's face immediately swelled up, and a bloody tooth flew out. "Gray Fergus, the Nahum family won't let you off for treating me like this today." With half his face swollen, Lambert Naeem's speech was a little unclear. He tried to put on a strong front. "You still dare to threaten me?" Gray's eyes were cold. He slapped him again, and a few more bloody teeth fell out. The other half of Lambert's face was also swollen. You actually dare to treat me like this? Just you wait." Lambert Naeem was completely mad with anger. As a member of the Duke's family, he had the strength of a second-tier barbarian. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? His eyes were bloodshot as he gritted his teeth and looked at Gray. He was missing a few teeth, and his mouth couldn't be sealed. Blood even seeped out of his mouth. "Looks like your Nahum family is really used to being high and mighty." Gray's eyes were cold. His empty hand reached for the sword at his waist. With a clang, the sword was unsheathed. What do you want to do?" Lambert Naeem struggled in fear as he looked at the unsheathed sword in Gray's hand. But he was seriously injured and couldn't break free. "Stop!" Many people from the Clover Chamber of Commerce struggled to get up and stop him, but they were all seriously injured. They staggered and couldn't even stand properly. Gray's eyes were cold as he waved his sword. Poof! Blood spurted out. An arm flew high into the air and landed on the square, which was already covered in broken stone slabs and mud. It rolled a few times before coming to a stop. He actually cut off President Lambert's right hand. The people from the Clover Chamber of Commerce and the surrounding merchants were all dumbfounded. They hadn't expected Gray to dare do such a thing. He had actually cut off the arm of the Clover Chamber of Commerce's president. This enmity was huge. "You actually cut off my right hand. Just you wait. The Nahum family will definitely avenge me," Lambert Naeem said, his face full of hatred as he broke out in a cold sweat. "Don't worry. My next stop is your Nahum family." Sheathing his sword, Gray sneered as he looked at the severed arm. A flame appeared and instantly charred the arm. With the example of the Wallen family, Edgar Wallen's severed arm had been reattached, so he naturally couldn't leave it intact. Even a Wallen family could reattach a severed arm, let alone the Nahum family. If that was the case, cutting off Lambert's arm would be meaningless. Carrying Lambert, Gray turned and left. He covered 10 meters with each step, quickly heading in the direction of the Nahum family. Put down the president. Behind him, the other people from the Clover Chamber of Commerce were full of anger, but they were powerless to stop him. They had no courage or strength. They knew that even if the Nahum family suppressed Gray Fergus later, the Clover Chamber of Commerce would probably become a laughingstock in the future. Their headquarters would be destroyed, and even their president would be taken away. "Let's go to the Fergus family." Elle Leander, the elder sister of the two siblings, turned and said, Why are we going to the Fergus family?" Quentin Leander asked doubtfully. "Don't we need herbs?" "The Fergus family happens to have them," Elle Leander said with a smile. "But the Fergus family is now in conflict with the Nahum family. If we have dealings with the Fergus family now, we will definitely be suppressed by the Nahum family." Quentin Leander had a worried look. Looking at Gray and Fergus, they should be very confident. "But just in case, we can go to Fergus City first and have people pay close attention to the news of Naeem City." Elle Leander's beautiful face showed a sly smile. "If the Fergus family gets through this, then we will immediately trade with the Fergus family. If not, we have no loss." Chapter 461. With the departure of Elle, Leandre and Quentin, the other onlookers also left. Their faces were full of surprise. It was the first time in so many years that they had seen someone provoke the Nahum family like this. Of course, they weren't optimistic about Gray's chances. He was just a newly promoted earl. It was impossible for him to have the ability to contend with a duke's family like the Naeem family. It was like a wild wolf wanting to challenge a fierce beast. 2 days later, Gray entered the Nahum territory. He did not use teleportation. Although the Wallen family knew that Gray had a teleportation magic weapon in his hand, they did not spread the news. It was not until recently that Gray learned that the royal family had issued a gag order to the Wallen family to protect Gray, so that the Wallen family could not disclose it. He did not use teleportation to bring the president of the Clover Chamber of Commerce, but with his current speed, it only took him 2 days to enter the Neham territory at full speed. It was just that along the way, the president of the Clover Chamber of Commerce suffered a lot. In addition, he was seriously injured and could not be treated in time. When the two arrived at the Neham city, the president was dying. Gray Fergus, how dare you attack the Chamber of Commerce of the Neham family? More than 10 miles away from the Neham city, Gray, who was carrying the president of the Clover Chamber of Commerce, was stopped by a group of people. The leader of the group was a majestic man in his 50s. He looked at Gray coldly and said in a cold voice, he was the patriarch of the Neham family, Ajnan Neham. Gray was not slow all the way, but after all, he could not fly. He took a lot of detours. Before that, a messenger bird had already sent the news back to the Ram family. That was why Gray was stopped more than 10 miles away from the Neham city. Why not? Just because it's the Neham family's Chamber of Commerce? You think too highly of the Neham family. A cold smile appeared on Gray's face. Since the main character was here, there was no need to keep the president of Shamrock Chamber of Commerce alive. Therefore, he casually threw the dying president of Shamrock Chamber of Commerce at the feet of the people of Nelm family. Lambert, some members of the Neham family came forward to check on his injuries. When they found out about his injuries, they all glared angrily at Gray. How cruel! Not only did he cut off his arm, he didn't even treat his injuries. The Naeem family was famous for being ruthless to the outside world. They had robbed, killed, and exterminated people. They had done such things quite often. However, they were extremely united internally, and their relationship with each other was more intimate than that of an ordinary large family. It had to be said that this was a very unique family. They were very friendly to their own family members and were full of familial love, but to outsiders, they were ruthless and merciless. Good, very good. After so many years, you're the first person who dares to provoke the Nahum family like this. The head of the Nahum family, Ajnan Nahum, stared coldly at Gray, as if the king of the forest had been provoked by a little mouse. He was extremely angry. The first one? What an honor. Today, let me break the laughable pride of your Nahum family. Gray sneered. The best response to this kind of family that was full of superiority was to trample them under his feet and trample them with all his strength. Arrogant. Do you really think that no one can deal with you just because you have the strength of a desolation grade? First, you hurt a member of the Nahum family, and now you say such words. Even if I cripple you today, the royal family will definitely not stand up for you. 2 old men walked out. One of them was wearing a green battle suit and had a slightly thin appearance. The other had a medium build, but the muscles all over his body were rather strong. These 2 people were Gray's old acquaintances. Back in Riem City, when Gray was recognized by the Nahum family, he was almost besieged by these 2 people. However, he was stopped by Sophia in the end. Now, these 2 people were preparing to join forces to besiege Gray again. Swoosh, swoosh. The 2 of them attacked at the same time. 2 huge green wind blades, more than 10 meters long and several meters wide, whizzed out. Along the way, a large number of trees fell. Under the scattered wind blades, deep scratches were left on the ground. Before they even got close, a terrifyingly sharp aura locked onto Gray. Facing the terrifying attack, Gray's expression did not change at all. On the battlefield, he could already rely on his terrifying defense to resist the siege of 2 Desolation Blood warriors, let alone now. Kacha! 2 small black fog rivers appeared and blocked the 2 huge wind blades. The 2 wind blades fell into the black fog rivers. Although they stirred up waves, they eventually quieted down. Moreover, the 2 black fog rivers did not dissipate. Under Gray's control, they attacked the 2 old men from the left and right respectively. Poof, poof. A terrifying pothole appeared where the 2 old men had been standing. Near the potholes, rocks and trees had all disappeared. Relying on the affinity body constitution, his destructive power is indeed comparable to a level 2 desolation level. Not far away, the two old men's faces showed a hint of surprise. Gray had the affinity body constitution and had many bloodlines in his body. His strongest combat power could reach level 2 desolation level. The Warner Nahum brothers had naturally told the Nahum family, "Be careful, don't get hit by the attack." The two of them were not frightened by Gray. Instead, after a dignified look flashed across their faces, their figures flickered and pounced on Gray from both sides. A battle was not simply a competition of destructive power. Speed, defense, combat skills, and many other aspects would also affect the final outcome of the battle. As members of the Nahum family, the blood technique they cultivated was extremely fast. Although it was not as fast as the blood technique of the Scarlet Kingdom's royal family, it was only slightly slower. This was why they dared to fight Gray, even though they knew that Gray's combat power had reached level 2 desolation level. So what if his destructive power was strong? As long as the attack could not reach him, it would be useless no matter how strong it was. Whoosh! In an instant, the two old men appeared on both sides of Gray. The long swords in their hands shone with a green light and emitted an ear-piercing, buzzing sound. They stabbed towards Gray at the same time. Gray did not move. He did not dodge because he knew that he could not dodge with his speed. After all, he was at level 2 barbarian level. Naturally, his speed was only at level 2 barbarian level. However, even if he could not dodge, it did not mean that he did not have a way to deal with it. One on the left and one on the right. Two streaks of black fog whipped towards the two old men like two huge snake tails. Chi-chi. Two deep ravines appeared on the ground under the impact of the black fog. The two old men once again relied on their speed to dodge the attack, and attacked Gray from another direction. Oomph! Gray snorted. Suddenly, more than 10 streaks of black fog appeared and attacked the two old men from all directions. They covered all the directions they could dodge. Puff, puff! Every direction was blocked. The two old men could no longer dodge. They were each hit by a streak of black fog. Bloody wounds appeared on their bodies, and they were sent flying. The two old men fought Gray with their advantage in speed. This strategy was not wrong. Speed was indeed Gray's weakness. The only mistake was that the other party had picked the wrong person. If they were faced with Jelenway Austin's simplistic and straightforward Blood Fiend ability, this method would naturally be very effective. However, the black fog could be used separately or together. It could even be used as a defensive method. It was not suitable for the black fog, which had a variety of combat methods. Since you're fast, I'll split up the Blood Fiend ability and cover a large area. Whoosh! Gray's attack did not end there. Although he could not kill the old men, he could severely injure or even cripple them. It was just like what the old men had said before. The black fog, which had originally been divided into more than 10 streaks, quickly combined into 2 long rivers of black fog and attacked the two old men. The two old men's expressions changed. If they were hit by the 2 long rivers of black fog, they would probably be seriously injured and would have to lie in bed for a few months. Puff, puff! Just as the long rivers of black fog were about to hit the two old men, 2 green tornadoes appeared and collided with the long rivers of black fog. They blocked the long rivers of black fog and completely crushed them, saving the two old men. At that moment, an old man appeared in the field. He wore green clothes and had a white face without a beard. His eyes were extremely sharp, and they were as sharp as an eagle's. Being stared at by him was like being stared at by a predator. Desolate level, second level. Gray narrowed his eyes. Only a second-level, desolate-level blood warrior could easily block his attack, which was at the second level of desolate level. However, his expression did not change much. It would be strange if there was no second-level, desolate-level existence in such a large family that had once produced a king-level expert. How many years has it been since the Nahum family became a dukedom? This is the first time someone dares to bully us. The old man in green did not attack Gray immediately. Instead, he stared at Gray with cold eyes. You're lucky to have an affinity system and some strength. You dare to provoke the Nahum family? It seems that the Nahum family has not made a move for many years, and the outside world has forgotten to fear the Nahum family. His voice was cold, and the coldness in his eyes seemed to be able to freeze Gray. No, it's the Nahum family who thinks too highly of themselves. Gray did not feel the slightest bit of fear when he met the old man's gaze. Robbery, coercion, and bribery. Is there anything the Nahum family doesn't dare do? Do you really think that everyone is afraid of the Nahum family? Who gave you the confidence to not be afraid of the Nahum family? With your combat strength that barely reaches the second level of desolate level? The old man in green stared at Gray with a trace of disdain in his eyes. Green lights circled around him, and wild winds swirled around him. He looked like the god of storms. As a second-level, desolate-level existence who had been at this level for a long time, the old man did not think much of Lin Fan's combat strength that barely reached the second level. Tap, tap, tap. At this moment, the sound of footsteps came from the forest behind Gray. The footsteps were not loud, but the people present were not ordinary people. Naturally, they would not miss the sound of the footsteps. The azure-clothed elder and the other members of the Nahum family looked over and immediately saw a figure walking over from the forest behind Gray at a moderate pace. It was a slender figure. He wore ordinary clothes and had a sword hanging from his waist. The only thing special about him was the silver metal mask on his face. The pupils of the metal mask were inlaid with transparent red crystals, making it hard for people to see clearly.